Chapter 1934. Because of the young man's large movements, the bandage on his body was once again filled with blood. The girl, squatting by the side, with a sobbing tone, tried to help the young man back to the bed. But the young man insisted on climbing out of the bed. "Young master, don't move. If you continue to move, you can't use your hands and feet." The girl cried with tears all over her face. "Let me go. I want to see my sister. He hadn't finished his words. An extremely clear voice could be heard saying, "Ziling, let him go." The girl, squatting on the ground, heard the words, suddenly raised her head and looked in front of her in surprise. A young girl in red stood in front of them coldly, like a waterfall of fine black hair, simply tied up at the temples of a young girl. That face, ordinary and unremarkable, but that pair of charming eyes, just one look, they recognized the identity of the girl. Ziling's throat was dry. After a long time, she spat out two words. "Miss." Yi Qing Luo's expression was indifferent. Her eyes were also emotionless as she stared coldly at the two people in front of her. "Ziling, come here." Ziling instinctively wanted to get up, but the muffled groan of the young man beside her made her heart hurt. If she really let go of his hand, he would certainly not be able to stabilize his body. He would fall. Ziling's lips trembled, just as she was about to open her mouth to plead for him. But she was interrupted by Yi Qing Luo's cold voice. "Ziling, you are my servant." Her voice deepened a few notches. Ziling knew that this was the last sign of Yi Qing Luo's tolerance. If she insisted on supporting Yi Fengyu, not to mention whether she would be driven out by Yi Qing Luo, she was afraid that Yi Fengyu would also be implicated because of this. What's more, Yi Qing Luo would not bear to let him get hurt. Ziling pursed her lips and carefully let go of Yi Fengyu's hand. Immediately, she slowly walked to Yi Qing Luo's side. The young girl had already shed the immaturity she once had. She had a pretty face that was extremely delicate and pretty. Her leg had been healed. Walking steadily, no one could tell that she was once a disabled person. Yi Qing Luo just took a glance and saw that the current Ziling was actually a cultivator in the yellow profound 7th grade realm, although this profound grade was extremely low for Yi Qing Luo. However, with Ziling's aptitude, in just a few months, from an ordinary person with no cultivation foundation, she became a profound practitioner. It could be seen that he was no longer trash. She just lacked an opportunity. Yi Qing Luo withdrew her gaze from Ziling. Then it landed on Yi Fengyu. She narrowed her eyes and crossed her arms over her chest. She looked at the young man who was kneeling on the ground and panting heavily. She curled her lips into a mocking sneer. "Didn't you say that you don't want your hands and feet anymore? That you don't even want your life anymore? Then stand up and walk in front of me." "Miss." Ziling bit her lower lip, tears welling up in her eyes. The Mu brothers who followed behind her coughed lightly. "Qing Luo, it's not easy for you two to meet. Don't make the atmosphere so stiff." Yi Qing Luo sneered. Her eyes were sneering. "Yes, because I was worried about him, worried about what happened to Three Springs sect. I rushed back from the southern continent. Did not dare to stop for even a moment. It was not easy to rush back, only to find out that my brother is not afraid of death. Sister." Yi Fengyu was in so much pain that he sucked in a breath of cold air. His fair face was drenched in sweat. His voice trembled as he called out to Yi Qing Luo. "Don't call me sister. I don't have a brother like you who doesn't take his own body seriously." Yi Qing Luo scolded in a low voice. Chapter 1935. Qing Luo. Xiao Yu also knows his mistake. Don't blame him. If he continues to lie down like this, not to mention his feet and hands won't recover, I reckon he will die from excessive blood loss. Mu Zifei tried to smooth things over, quickly walked towards Yi Fengyu, bent down and prepared to help him up. No need to help him. Yi Qing Luo coldly glanced at Mu Zifei. Mu Zifei's body stiffened, pausing his actions. Mu Zifan clutched his chest, obediently shut his mouth and didn't dare to speak. Obviously changed into an ordinary face. Thrown into the crowd, absolutely no one would be able to pick out that kind of face. But unfortunately, his aura was still so strong, especially when he met her enchanting eyes that seemed to have been frozen for 1,000 years. They were so stunned that they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. There was a strange silence in the secret chamber. The Mu brothers looked at each other, seemingly urging each other to break the deadlock. However, after being swept by Yi Qing Luo's gaze, both of them didn't dare to speak lightly. Ziling was even more afraid to speak, and Yi Qing Luo and the rest knew Yi Qing Luo's character very well, even if they opened their mouths to plead for Yi Fengyu. As long as Yi Qing Luo was still angry, Yi Fengyu still couldn't understand where he went wrong. Yi Qing Luo wouldn't be the slightest bit lenient. Just when everyone's heart was in a state of turmoil, she saw a purple figure slowly walking to Yi Qing Luo's back, raised his palm and gently placed it on her head. The man also had an ordinary face, but no one would be able to think of him as ordinary and mediocre. The man's temperament was out of this world, like a banished immortal. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's eyes, it was full of pampering and gentleness. His big palm gently stroked Yi Qing Luo's head, smiling warmly. Xiaoyu already knows his mistake. Don't punish him like this. Isn't punishing him also punishing yourself? The Mu brothers' vision fell onto Di and Mo Xian in unison. Their guess was right. This man was the disguised Di and Mo Xian, being touched so gently by the man. Yi Qing Luo's gloomy cold air gradually dissipated by more than half. She unhappily swatted away the hand on her head and stared resentfully at Di and Mo Xian. She was teaching Yi Fengyu that no matter what, he must always value his own life. However, she could see that Yi Fengyu's body had indeed reached its limit. His heart was aching. However, he could only endure the pain. He had already suffered such a serious injury. His hands and feet were about to be crippled. However, after hearing her voice, he didn't even care about his own body. He just wanted to rush out of the bed and see her. Did he think that being so agitated and doing this meant that he cared about her and that he was constantly worried about her? No. This kind of behavior, Yi Qing Luo only wanted to comment on one word. That was stupidity. Big sister, I know I was wrong. Yi Fengyu's voice was strained, and all that was left was the sound of his breathing. He fiercely sucked in a breath of cold air and spoke again. Sister, please help me back to the bed. Yi Qing Luo's tensed expression, under Yi Fengyu's weak pleading, smoothly collapsed. She quickly walked forward and bent down to help Yi Fengyu up. She couldn't help but scold him. You've learned your lesson, haven't you? Yi Fengyu was sent to the back of the stone bed. Everyone behind him heaved a sigh of relief. Mu Zifei immediately went forward and took out a new bandage and medicine. Your injury is very serious. If you don't want to become a cripple, then obediently lie on the bed and don't move around. Yi Fengyu obediently nodded. Chapter 1936. Tell me, what happened to Three Springs Sect? What's the situation in Three Springs City now? Yi Qing Luo looked at Mu Zifan. Mu Zifan's complexion immediately became grave. They casually found a place to sit down. Following that, he told Yi Qing Luo everything that had happened during this period of time. Just 6 days ago, which was also the day when Yi Qing Luo went missing in South Tide Continent, the Three Springs sect was in turmoil. Yi Tianquang, the sect master of the Three Springs sect, was found to be seriously ill in bed, and no one could cure him. Even though the Three Springs sect status in the West Wave continent had declined, it was still one of the 4 great sects that guarded the god race. Such a big sect, he couldn't be without a master for even a day. As the young sect matriarch, Yi Qing Luo was still in South Tide Continent. Just at this moment, Yi Qing Qian brought a large group of powerful cultivators back to Three Springs sect. On the same day, Three Springs sect announced the abolition of Yi Qing Luo's young matriarch position. The reason was that sect master Yi Tianquang wasn't seriously ill at all. Rather, Yi Qing Luo had poisoned Yi Tianquang in order to force him to abdicate. In order to hunt down Yi Qing Luo, the deranged, patricide traitor of the Three Springs sect, Yi Qing Qian recommended the only male in Three Springs sect who was still in the residence, Yi Fengru, as the new patriarch of Three Springs sect. After Yi Fengru became the patriarch of Three Springs sect, he passed most of the authority of Three Springs sect to Yi Qing Qian. Yi Qing Qian then placed the batch of powerful cultivators she had brought along into every corner of the West Continent in batches. In a short span of 2 days, the Three Springs sect controlled the lifeline of the entire West Continent. Even the 4 great clans had been brutally murdered. If anyone dares to defy the Three Springs sect, on that day, the heads of the entire family would be hung on the city wall. In this way, the forces of the Western Continent who were unwilling to accept the outcome wouldn't dare to act rashly. After Yi Qing Luo finished listening, the expression on her face gradually congealed. She knitted her brows and asked, Yi Fengru and Yi Qing Qian have joined forces? Have you fought with the batch of cultivators that Yi Qing Qian brought back? She knew that Yi Fengru was ambitious, but she had not expected Yi Fengru to choose to cooperate with Yi Qing Qian. This was truly unfathomable. Moreover, Yi Qing Qian, she was now a member of the Dark Coalition. The group of powerful, profound practitioners that he had brought with him was probably the group of people who had escaped from the Dark Forces. Yi Fengru should be very clear about Yi Qing Qian's current power and the true identity of those cultivators. Now that the Dark Forces had been completely annihilated by the Imperial Palace, the remaining few wouldn't be able to cause much trouble. Yi Qing Zhen really couldn't understand. How could someone as smart as Yi Fengru make such a choice? Moreover, he was willing to let go of the authority of Three Springs sect to Yi Qing Qian. What was even more terrifying was, in just 2 short days, the entire Western Continent was under their control. Yi Qing Qian wanted to make use of Three Springs sect to let the Dark Forces return to Nirvana Realm. The day it happened, Big Brother and I were chased out by Dad. Mu Zifei shook his head. Father knows that those people from the Three Springs sect won't let you off, so he specially had us 2 brothers stop you before you enter the city. After Mu Zifan bandaged Yi Fengyu's wound again, he sighed lightly. Yi Qing Qian knows that you're definitely worried about Fengyu and has been searching for your whereabouts in the city for the past few days. Once you enter the city, Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips, recalling when she was pulled away by Mu Zifan earlier, falling onto herself, that icy cold gaze. Yi Qing Qian probably already knew that she had returned to the Western Continent. Asterisk. Chapter 1937. What happened to little Yu's injury? Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes and looked at Yi Fengyu. Yi Fengru? Yi Qing Qian? On the stone bed, the young man who was wrapped in bandages trembled slightly. Ziling wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said in a tearful voice, "It's little Big." She stopped, and a trace of anger appeared in her eyes. "It's that bitch Yi Qing Qian." Ziling, Yi Fengyu shouted in a hoarse voice. As if he wanted to stop Ziling, Ziling's lips moved. After receiving the look from Yi Qing Luo, she continued, "Yi Qing Qian, that bitch." In order to force young master to submit, she forced him to write a letter to trick you back to Three Springs sect, so that she could catch you like a turtle in a jar. Young master naturally refused to listen, so that bitch directly crippled young master's right hand and right leg, and almost crippled young master's cultivation. Ziling's tone was full of hatred and anger. She clenched her fists and looked at the wounded Yi Fengyu on the stone bed, gritting her teeth even harder. Yi Qing Luo's expression became more and more solemn. That pair of enchanting eyes seemed to be stained with a layer of coldness. When she helped Yi Fengyu earlier, Yi Qing Luo had already taken the opportunity to feel his pulse. Yi Fengyu not only suffered from serious external injuries, but his internal injuries were also extremely serious. Without careful recuperation, she was afraid that Yi Fengyu would really be a cripple in this life. Moreover, the meridians of his hand and right leg were broken. Just how ruthless was he? Yi Qing Luo could almost imagine how much torment and pain he had suffered at that time. Yi Qing Qian. She did not look for her. How dare she take the initiative to stir up trouble? How did you escape? Yi Qing Luo's gloomy voice was extremely strange. Her gaze swept over the Mu brothers. The two of them shook their heads and waved their hands. No, it wasn't us. We were about to sneak into the Three Springs sect through the back door to gather information for you when we were attacked by these two people. Yi Qing Luo frowned. Someone rescued Yi Fengyu and Ziling, and threw it to the Mu brothers who were about to sneak in? Ling didn't see that person's face clearly, but Ling knows that the person who saved Ling, and young master is a man and he's very strong. Even that bitch didn't have the chance to fight back in front of him. Ling recalled the situation at that time and clenched her fists angrily. Ling thought that it was someone arranged by Miss to protect young master. If it wasn't for that person who saved young master would definitely be tortured to death by that bitch. Yi Qing Luo's tightly clenched fist loosened slightly, then clenched it again. The process repeated more than 10 times. Only then did she suppress the anger in her heart. She slowly walked to the stone bed and looked at the young man who was covered in wounds. Even though he was bandaged, he was still bleeding. She raised her hand and gently stroked his messy hair. Little you, now that I'm back, leave the rest to me. Sister. Yi Fengyu looked up anxiously. Yi Qing Luo's gaze made him swallow back the words he was about to say. Yi Qing Luo withdrew her hand and looked at him firmly. Little you, now you are the only one who can shoulder the responsibility of the Yi family, do you understand? Nothing must happen to you, otherwise Three Springs sect will really cease to exist. Yi Fengyu's face turned green. He blinked his eyes. His eyes were filled with panic and helplessness. But sister, you are the... Chapter 1938. Yi Fengyu's eyes became more and more flustered as he subconsciously moved back. It seemed like he didn't want Yi Qing Luo to touch his forehead. However, as soon as he moved, a burst of tearing pain came from his body. He hissed and sucked in a breath of cold air. The girl's cold fingertips had already fallen on his forehead. Yi Qing Luo's lips curved, revealing a smile. Her smile was filled with endless warmth. Yi Fengyu only felt a warm feeling, like spring water, spreading from his forehead and passing through his brain. Then his forehead was boiling hot. A few moments later, several patterns appeared on Yi Fengyu's forehead. The pattern was extremely light, very shallow, but it could be faintly seen that it was a cherry blossom pattern outlined by red flowing light. Yi Fengyu's eyes widened, staring at Yi Qing Luo in astonishment. Sister, why, how did Yi Qing Luo know that there was a cherry blossom pattern on his forehead? When this cherry blossom pattern appeared on Yi Fengyu's forehead, the people around them were all dumbfounded. They looked at the pattern on his forehead incredulously, although it was only a few shallow lines. But it was enough to clearly distinguish that it was a cherry blossom. Mu Zifan was the first to react. He quickly rushed to the stone bed, both hands on the stone bed, staring at the pattern on his forehead. This is the mark of the 4 major sects. Yi Qing Luo straightened up, her lips hooked up into a smile. Rumor has it that the 4 major sects are the guardians of the divine emperor's tomb, as well as the envoys to maintain peace and balance in the Nirvana realm. Every patriarch of the 4 major sects is personally selected by the divine emperor. In every generation, only one person can obtain the inheritance of the patriarch, which is this divine emperor mark. Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers pointed to his forehead. Feng Yu. Feng Yu is the real young patriarch of Three Springs sect. The Mu brothers were stunned. They had always thought that Yi Qing Luo was the real person who obtained the divine emperor mark. Otherwise, in the past 15 years, Yi Qing Luo was a waste without any cultivation ability. How could Yi Tianquang let her be the young patriarch of Three Springs sect for so many years? But the God Emperor mark appeared on Yi Fengyu's body. That also meant that the real young sect master was actually Yi Fengyu. Every generation of the 4 major sects only had one sect master to inherit the legacy. It's not like this, no. Sister, Yi Feng, you couldn't understand why Yi Qing Luo would reveal the God Emperor's mark on his forehead. Moreover, Yi Qing Luo's forehead also had this mark. It was when he fought with the Corpse King in the tomb of the Ling King. He saw that cherry blossom pattern on Yi Qing Luo's forehead. Moreover, that pattern, that mark, compared to the mark on his forehead, it was thousands of times more obvious. Yi Qing Luo was the one who truly possessed the God Emperor's imprint. Big Sister knows that you've always kept this secret and gave the position of young sect master to Big Sister in order to protect her. Yi Qing Luo had already interrupted Yi Feng Yu's words with a smile. Yi Feng Yu stared at Yi Qing Luo in a daze. A strange emotion was gradually surging in his heart. Yi Qing Luo didn't give him a chance to think deeply. Under the bright candlelight, Yi Qing Luo's smile was clean and pure. But in the next moment, her hand was already lightly placed on his shoulder. Her strength was very light and didn't touch his wound. However, Yi Fengyu could feel a heavy pressure on his shoulders. He wanted to speak. Chapter 1939. So, Xiao Yu, what you need to do now is to cooperate with Zifan's treatment. Yi Qing Luo's expression was solemn. In a few days, Master Ghost Doctor will be back. By then, I will plead for Master Ghost Doctor to treat you. Mu Zifan's eyes lit up, you mean? Ghost Hand Doctor? Yes. Yi Qing Luo nodded. With Master Ghost Doctor around, Xiao Yu has an 80% chance of recovering. But the prerequisite is, Xiao Yu, you must cooperate. Yi Feng Yu was still in a state of shock. Yi Qing Luo's hand had already moved away from his shoulder. If you want to protect me, if you want to give me a family that I can rely on, then promise me that after you cooperate with my treatment, you'll help me take back Three Springs sect. You'll make Three Springs sect flourish and become my strongest backer. Following Yi Qing Luo's firm and encouraging voice, Yi Feng Yu's gaze gradually became firm. He looked at Yi Qing Luo. In his heart, a flame was burning. Although the flame was small, but it had the power to start a prairie fire. I promise you, I want to become my most solid fortress. I will protect my sister and not let anyone bully her. The young man's sonorous voice revealed his conviction. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she patted his head, her eyes filled with warmth. Amen, I believe you. After comforting Yi Fengyu, watching the young man relax his willpower, and slowly fell into a deep sleep, Yi Qing Luo then left the stone bed. She had just taken a few steps when her body was enveloped by a wave of warmth. The man's strong arm carried her up by the waist. You need to rest too. Mo Xian's low and hoarse voice was filled with anger. Ever since she found out that Three Springs sect was in trouble, Yi Qing Luo had been worried about Yi Fengyu and Ziling, and hadn't been able to close her eyes for the past few days. Even if she occasionally took a nap in his arms, she would wake up in less than an hour. Now that she was sure that Yi Fengyu was still alive, she should take a break. I want to make a trip to Three Springs sect. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips, clenching her fists. No way. This time, Mo Xian didn't listen to Yi Qing Luo's words, forcefully rejecting her request. I have already allowed you to be willful for 3 days. Three Springs sex matters can be settled any time. Now rest. It was an irresistible voice, and one could hear the anger in it. Obviously, this was DMO Xian's bottom line. Yi Qing Luo opened her mouth, knowing full well that DMO Xian was worried about her health and was unable to refute his concern. Tong Zi Qing tried to smooth things over. That's right, Qing Luo. What the Overlord said is right. We've been on the road for 3 consecutive days, and even if you're not tired, we're all tired. Let's take a rest here first. You have a mortal body. Even if your body is made of iron, it won't be able to withstand your torment. Long Yunjian said lightly. Mo Yu-ing was like a puppet. She nodded stiffly and said in a stiff voice, Even I feel tired. If you don't want me to use other methods to make you sleep, then obediently close your eyes. The deep and pleasant voice seemed to be hypnotizing as it floated in her ears. Yi Qing Luo stared resentfully at DMO Xian's magnificent face. In the end, she still succumbed to his despotic power. All right, she was indeed very tired. Moreover, Long Yunjian and the others were also tired, whether she wanted to or not. The final result would probably be she rested in DMO Xian's arms. Forget it. Rather than letting DMO Xian use extreme methods to force her to sleep, she might as well take the initiative to rest. Perhaps it was because the arm which was hugging her was too safe. Or perhaps it was because his elegant sandalwood scent was too reassuring. But after closing her eyes for a moment, she fell into a deep sleep. Asterisk. Chapter 1940. Yi Qing Luo's sleep had lasted for an entire day. Perhaps it was because the tension in her emotions these few days had been relaxed in this instance. Or perhaps it was because of DMO Xian's warm and reassuring aura, which lingered around her nose. After Yi Qing Luo woke up, she felt that her entire body was extremely relaxed. There was no trace of the laziness and softness from sleeping for an entire day and night. She was suspicious. Did she undergo a profound energy baptism while she was sleeping? The moment she moved, the man who was hugging her also woke up in shock. He slowly opened his shimmering peach blossom eyes as his dense long lashes moved lazily and seductively. His eyes, which had just woken up, were filled with a hazy mist. Even though she was used to seeing DMO Xian's peerless elegance, at this moment, Yi Qing Luo's heart was like thunder. She gazed at DMO Xian's face in a daze, as though she was in a daze. Sensing the young lady's gaze, DMO Xian's lips curled slightly as he laughed lightly. Are you satisfied with this husband's face? Yi Qing Luo's cheeks instantly flushed red. She speedily shifted her gaze away. Husband, these 2 words fell into Yi Qing Luo's ears, as though it was teasing her about something. DMO Xian gave a low laugh. His chest vibrated, rising and falling. His brows were filled with a teasing smile. Yi Qing Luo's face turned even redder from his laughter. Uffed! An unbearable laughter was heard from the side. Yi Qing Luo immediately stared angrily. She saw Tong Zi Qing covering her mouth, but her curved eyes were unable to conceal the smile. Seeing Yi Qing Luo looking at her, Tong Zi Qing was helpless as she put down her hand which was covering her mouth, but her eyes were still filled with laughter. Sorry, Qing Luo, I wanted to hold it in. But seeing you behaving like a little wife in front of the Overlord, I just couldn't hold it in, ha ha ha. Tong Zi Qing couldn't help but laughed out loud, laughing till the end. She knew that even if she stopped, Yi Qing Luo would absolutely not let her off easily. She might as well hold her stomach and laugh out loud. The corners of Long Yunjian and the others' mouths also curled up into an extremely shallow arc. Yi Qing Luo smashed her head hard into DMO Xian's arms. Damn! She had forgotten that Long Yunjian and the rest were still watching from the side. Could it be that the scene of her staring at DMO Xian's face in a daze had been seen by them? Her image. Jokes aside, after the atmosphere became lively, the Imperial Palace's disciple, whom DMO Xian had arranged in advance, brought the news, just as they rested in the secret passage for a day and a night. Another earth-shattering change occurred in Three Springs City. It wasn't until this afternoon that the matter had completely fermented. The situation had already developed into a serious trend. Speaking of this, it had to start from yesterday, when Yi Qing Luo and the others were outside the city gates. It was indeed like what Yi Qing Luo had guessed. Yi Qing Qian already knew about Yi Qing Luo's return to the West Continent, because outside the city gate he had only caught a glimpse of red dress. Yi Qing Qian was almost certain that Hong Yi was Yi Qing Luo. Hence, Yi Qing Qian summoned those guards from Three Springs sect to search for Yi Qing Luo's whereabouts in the entire city. This search lasted for an entire day. By the afternoon of the second day, Yi Qing Qian lost her patience. Yi Qing Qian knew that if Yi Qing Luo intentionally hid, even if she dug 3 feet into the ground, she might not be able to find any traces of Yi Qing Luo. Hence, Yi Qing Qian used an extreme method to force Yi Qing Luo to appear on her own accord. The current Yi Qing Qian in Three Springs City, or even in the West Continent, could be said to be able to cover the sky with one hand. Even if it was the royal family, they were unable to do anything to her. Asterisk. Chapter 1941. Not to mention the 4 great families, especially the Mu family. Yi Qing Qian led the guards from Three Springs sect and those powerful cultivators, who were the remnants of the dark forces, to surround the Mu family and kidnapped the entire Mu family, forcefully bringing them to the West Lawn Square. And she had already spread the news to the entire West Lawn Island. If they didn't see Yi Qing Luo and the rest appearing tonight, Yi Qing Qian would directly dismember the entire Mu family at the West Lawn Square. Not only would the Mu family be unable to keep their corpses intact, she would also slice the Mu family into minced meat in front of the commoners. After these words were spread, the commoners were horrified. Some of them kept berating Yi Qing Luo. They were certain that if it wasn't for the enmity between Yi Qing Qian and Yi Qing Luo, why would Yi Qing Qian take revenge on the West Lawn Continent? How could the entire West Lawn Continent be controlled by a bunch of third-rate 9 sects? Especially now that they saw the Mu family, who had always been helping the people because of Yi Qing Luo being held up at the West Lawn Square, about to be humiliated by that vicious woman. The commoners' dissatisfaction towards Yi Qing Luo, towards Three Springs sect, started to grow and spread in their hearts. They who were in deep trouble, they had all forgotten that before this happened, they were still saying that they were proud of Yi Qing Luo. Of course, this wasn't the end. The situation was still fermenting. Just 6 hours after Yi Qing Qian kidnapped the entire Mu family, she gathered those remnants of the dark forces, guarding the surroundings of Three Springs City. Once the Mu family was dismembered, they started to kill the commoners from house to house. In a quarter of an hour, one family was massacred, until the traitor of Three Springs sect, Yi Qing Luo, appeared. The moment this news came out, not only were the guards from Three Springs sect searching for Yi Qing Luo's whereabouts, even those commoners joined in the search. None of them wanted to die. None of them wanted to die for an insignificant person. As long as they found Yi Qing Luo and handed her over, none of them would have to die. As a result, the entire Western continent was plunged into chaos. The few people in the secret room heard that, and their expressions turned gloomy. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as she sneered sinisterly. She's gone out all of a sudden, not even wanting her own reputation. In the past, what Yi Qing Jian cared about the most was her reputation. She painstakingly put on a gentle and virtuous mask and was called the #1 beauty. But now she was infamous, so she didn't care. It could be seen that after the repeated exchanges with Yi Qing Luo, the baptism of defeat, it had already made Yi Qing Qian's heart extremely firm. Despicable and shameless. How dare she be so cruel? Who did she, Yi Qing Qian, think she could control the West Continent? How could the other 3 mainlands possibly give her this opportunity? Mu Zifei was endlessly furious. He clenched his fists tightly and his eyes were scarlet red. Tong Ziqing's icy cold eyes were filled with murderous intent. That damned Yi Qingqian, if I don't beat her till she begs for mercy. My surname is not Tong. It was too cruel, too despicable. He completely viewed human lives as worthless, even using the Mu family's people to force Yi Qing Luo to appear. Qing Luo, Mu Zifan, who had been silent, suddenly opened his mouth. That usually gentle face was solemn at this moment. He clenched his fists tightly as a trace of struggle flashed past his face. She openly lured you to the West Lawn Square. There must be a trap. You can't. Chapter 1942. Qing Luo. Mu Zifan's complexion darkened. If you go, you'll be throwing your life away. Zifan, I know you care about me. Yi Qing Luo's expression was very calm, without a trace of panic. It was as if he didn't know what kind of danger he would encounter once he went to the West Billow Square. She raised her charming eyes, and a warm smile appeared on her face. You treat me as your brother, and I also treat you as my brother. If I sacrifice the Mu family for my survival, how can I live peacefully? Although she had never seen anyone from the Mu family. But from the Mu brothers, she could clearly tell what kind of people the two elders of the Mu family were. Moreover, he was able to maintain his monogamous character in this era where concubines were common. It was enough to prove that the character and quality of the Mu family were extremely high. Otherwise, the two elders of the Mu family wouldn't have kicked the Mu brothers out of the Mu family on the day when the Three Springs sect was in trouble and asked them to specially stop her outside the city gate to tell her about the recent events in the West Continent. More importantly, they were relatives of the Mu brothers. How could Yi Qing Luo possibly sit back and do nothing for her own safety? Qing Luo. Mu Zifan's throat was dry. All right, let's not talk about anything else. With Ah Xian by my side, even 100 Yi Qingqian can't do anything to me. Yi Qing Luo was just about to raise her hand and pat Mu Zifan's shoulder. But her hand hadn't even touched Mu Zifan. His body was suddenly pulled back by someone. Yi Qing Luo fell into the man's arms. She turned around, put her hands around his waist, and said with a smile, "My protector, my thigh, are you jealous?" Dmo Xian narrowed his long and narrow peach blossom eyes. His thin lips were tinged with a smile, but inexplicably revealed a trace of chilliness. His gaze seemed to be asking, "What do you think?" Yi Qing Luo shuddered and stuffed her head into his arms. With such a thick thigh here, she decided to hug him tightly, no matter what tricks Yi Qingjian wanted to play. She was fearless. This was what it felt like to ride on someone's coattails, to have a patron, and to have a backer. Not satisfied. If you're not convinced, then find someone more powerful than His Majesty, the Overlord, to fight. Yi Qing Luo would choose to go to the West Lawn Public Square. This was within everyone's expectations. No one spoke up to stop them. There were still 6 hours until the Ion Hour. Yi Qing Luo took a look at Long Yunjian and the others as she pondered deeply for a moment. The few of us will go to the West Continent Public Square and save the Mu family's 2 elders, you all. She glanced at the Mu brothers. Presumably, the South Continent already knows about what happened in the West Continent. Zi Fei, find a way to contact the spies in the South Continent and send a letter to the headmaster of the headquarters. As long as he is willing to help me protect the Three Springs sect, we can still discuss the deal we discussed before. Mu Zifei memorized Yi Qing Luo's words and nodded vigorously. Yi Qing Luo's gaze shifted. Zifan, I'm afraid we need the Alchemist Guild to take action. The entire West Continent was already under Yi Qingqian's control. In reality, it was in the hands of the remnants of the Dark Forces. The surviving members of the Dark Forces were cruel and bloody. If he were to forcefully use the power of the Imperial Palace to suppress the remnants of the Dark Forces, it would be impossible for him to survive. He was afraid that they would retaliate. Moreover, there was a possibility of inconveniencing Dmo Xian. Yi Qing Luo could roughly guess it. Dmo Xian was in existence outside of Nirvana realms. Every plane had its own rules of survival. If other planes or the messengers wandering around the planes discovered Dmo Xian, who knows? They might even bring Dmo Xian back to his plane. She couldn't keep using the power of the Imperial Palace. Asterisk. Chapter 1943. The Mu brothers nodded their heads vigorously as they responded. Following that, the two of them received their mission and left the secret room. Yi Qing Luo's vision swept onto Long Yunjian and the others. She squinted her eyes slightly as she spoke calmly. You two go into the vicinity of the West Square first and investigate what kind of trap Yi Qing Qian has set for me. Saying that, Yi Qing Luo slowly walked towards Long Yunjian. She raised her hand and her slender fingers brushed past Long Yunjian's eyes. Long Yunjian was slightly stunned as he looked at the fingers brushing past his eyes, but he didn't resist at all. Even his eyelids didn't blink at all. Immediately after, Long Yunjian felt his pupils turning icy cold, as though something had entered his eyes. He moved a little, but there wasn't any abnormality, just as he was about to ask Yi Qing Luo what she meant by this. But he saw Tong Ziqing staring at him in a daze. Class monitor your eyes. Tong Ziqing's fingers trembled as she stared at Long Yunjian's eyes, as though she had suffered a shock. Long Yunjian raised his hand and wanted to touch his eyes, but was stopped by Yi Qing Luo. Don't move. This is to help you hide your azure blue eyes. This was something which she specially made for Long Yunjian, similar to the modern era's cosmetic contact lenses. In the 21st century, Yi Qing Luo had this idea. She also used practical actions. After all, Long Yunjian's eyes were indeed too conspicuous in Nirvana realm. No matter where he went, he would probably be recognized. Originally, she wanted to give it to Long Yunjian as a gift. She had not expected it to be put to use now. Long Yunjian now had a pair of brownish-black pupils, which was no different from normal people. After getting used to Long Yunjian's blue eyes, to see this normal color again, Tong Ziqing couldn't help but be shocked. She was also shocked at what Yi Qing Luo had done to be able to change a person's pupil color. The few of them had changed their appearances and were dressed in extremely ordinary clothes, adding on to the fact that Long Yunjian's unique eyes were concealed. Yi Qing Qian and the Dark Force's remnants would absolutely not be able to discover them. Then, sister, what does Kitty want to do? Kitty Li tilted her head as her bright eyes blinked. Yi Qing Luo rubbed her swaying black cat ears. You and Lulu stay here to take care of Xiaoyu. Lulu is in charge of changing Xiaoyu's dressing while you are responsible for their safety. Leaving Kitty Li here. Actually, she had her own selfish motives. The relationship between Kitty Li and that devil-like instructor, Zhou Mo, was obviously ambiguous. If this matter were to spread to the South Billow continent, Zhou Mo and Gue Wu should also receive this news. Zhou Mo was worried about Kitty Li, so he would definitely follow Kitty Li's scent. This would ensure Yi Fengyu's safety. The bigger reason was that Kitty Li had already signed a blood contract with her. She now possessed more than half of the Beastman's power. The battle between her and the King of Darkness, affecting two sacred beasts, affecting Shiju, naturally also affecting Kitty Li, who had signed a contract with her. If Kitty Li could use this to advance, it would naturally be the best thing. If he failed to advance, staying here would also ensure Kitty Li's safety. Yi Qing Luo rubbed Kitty Li's head once again as she reminded her softly, Sister, then you... Where are you going? Kitty Li's black cat ears moved, asking Long Yunjian and the others to go to the West Billow Square to scout for news. Didn't that mean that Yi Qing Luo wasn't intending to go to the West Billow Square now? Chapter 1944. Dmo Xian's thin lips rose slightly. Between his brows, there was a glint as it shone brilliantly. That magnificent aura made one's heart fluttered. Enough thigh. If you continue to tease me, I won't be able to control myself. Yi Qing Luo stared at him resentfully. This man, why was he releasing male hormones all the time? She was almost smelled by this scent, and her amorous heart started to sway. Dmo Xian shook his head, helplessly. This lass. Previously she called him her guardian angel. Now she even gave him a new nickname, What Thigh. He didn't know why her brain was filled with so many strange things. Dmo Xian held her arm tightly, fixing her petite body in his embrace. His loose black hair brushed against her face. I'll make a trip back to the imperial palace first. Dmo Xian heard that Yi Qing Luo wanted to go somewhere and had already guessed her plan. Now Yi Qing Qian's thoughts were all placed on the West Lake Square, whereas the place Yi Qing Luo wanted to go. He was very confident in his own woman. That place couldn't trap Yi Qing Luo at all. Ah, Xian. Yi Qing Luo frowned as she grabbed Dmo Xian's arm. This matter, we don't need the imperial palace. I promise you, unless it's a critical juncture, the imperial palace will not make a move. Dmo Xian rubbed her head as he said warmly, I just want to ensure that nothing goes wrong with you. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips. Don't worry, this matter concerns the dark forces. Even if I make a move, it's a matter of course, and I won't receive any punishment. Dmo Xian saw the worry in Yi Qing Luo's eyes as he lowered his head and kissed her lips. I'm more unwilling than anyone else to leave you. It was just a light sentence. It soothed the restlessness in Yi Qing Luo's heart. The man's elegant sandalwood scent seeped into her heart bit by bit. The two's warm and sweet atmosphere. Even though the surrounding people had seen it many times, they still couldn't resist being stuffed with dog food. After they had allocated their respective tasks, the few of them quietly left the secret tunnel. Before Dmo Xian left, he called Tang Beiyuan out. This was the secret guard who replaced Wind to protect Yi Qing Luo in the dark. Ah, a figure like a ghost quickly moved on the dazzling Golden City wall. The guards came and went, but none of them had detected any trace of Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as she followed the map in her memory and landed stably on the roof of the Crown Prince Palace. Her footsteps were light and did not make any sound. Yi Qing Luo released her perception as her vision swept across the surroundings. After confirming that there were only 2 remnants of the dark forces guarding the Crown Prince Palace, one at the front and one at the back. Relieved, she leaped into the Crown Prince's palace. He was right. Before going to West Lawn Square, she wanted to go to the Imperial Palace. The Crown Prince Palace was completely silent. It was so quiet that it didn't feel like the Crown Prince Palace at all. The faces of the maids and manservants that came and went were tense, and they were extremely careful. They were deeply afraid that they would offend any lord and end up with their heads separated from their bodies. Yi Qing Luo followed her memory and found the Crown Prince's bedroom. She stretched her body, and her soft body bent into an arc that ordinary people couldn't do. He slid in through the window. There was not a single sound of breathing in such a huge chamber. It was so quiet that it didn't seem like the place where the Crown Prince stayed. Yi Qing Luo walked into the inner hall of the bedroom. The entire room was filled with the stench of alcohol. Yi Qing Luo walked closer. He saw a tall figure sitting beside a mahogany table. On the table, there were a total of 8 wine jugs lying crookedly. There were also a few wine cups lying crookedly on the table. This showed how dispirited this person was. He was so drunk that he seemed to have lost his senses. He didn't even notice Yi Qing Luo's approaching footsteps. Asterisk. Chapter 1945. Crown Prince really can't take the blow. It's just a small setback, and you've already turned yourself into such a dispirited look. Those who don't know would have thought that Crown Prince had already been crippled. The young lady's voice was crisp and melodious, as though she was drinking from an icy spring. However, Her tone was filled with disdain and arrogance. Who? The drunk man banged on the table as he staggered as he stood up. He squinted his eyes as though he couldn't see the person in front of him clearly. His entire body reeked of alcohol, causing the entire luxurious bedroom to be filled with the smell of alcohol. Yi Qing Luo crossed her arms in front of her chest as her slender brows rose slightly, her eyes filled with a sneer of ridicule. Looks like I've wasted my time coming here today. Saying that, she turned around. Her flame-like skirt swept out in an arc that resembled a blazing sunset glow. The man stared at that arc. His pupils suddenly contracted as he staggered forward and chased after her for a few steps. With a putong sound, he fell heavily onto the ground. The man's dragon totem, which was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, seemed to have lost its ferocity at this instant. Yi Qing Luo's footsteps took a slight pause. She slowly turned around as she looked at the disheveled man who had fallen onto the ground. Lung Fengying, what else do you want to say? The man in front of her was the former second prince, the current crown prince, Lung Fengying. That handsome and delicate-looking, seemingly harmless face had long been covered with dejection and vicissitudes of life. Lung Fengying struggled, trying to climb up from the ground. But after he was drunk, he couldn't muster up any strength. He felt as though he was stepping on cotton, but his consciousness was telling him very clearly he absolutely could not let the young lady in front of him leave. This young lady was his god. Lung Fengying was so drunk that he couldn't see who the person was. There was only a strong sense of familiarity, and that feeling which made him inexplicably fearful, controlling him to ask Yi Qing Luo to stay. Don't go. Don't go. Lung Fengying mumbled in fear as he raised his hand up high, as he grabbed towards Yi Qing Luo's direction, but he couldn't grab anything at all. Save me. Save me, I beg you. The current Lung Fengying, where had the previous gentleness, high spirits, or the royal family's nobility? He was dejected, as if he had found a life-saving straw. He only wanted to hold on tightly and beg her to save him from this deep and fiery quagmire. Yi Qing Luo looked at him coldly. There was not the slightest emotion in his eyes. In her memory, in terms of appearance, Lung Fengying might not be able to match up to Lung Fenghua. However, his explosive aura, as well as his own ability and intelligence, all surpassed Lung Fenghua's. But he didn't expect the current Lung Fengying. His endurance was actually so poor. If it wasn't for the sake of the Mu family, she really didn't want to have anything to do with this Lung Fengying. She scoffed lightly as she slowly walked towards Lung Fengying. Her slender fingers pinched a pill. With a flick of his finger, the pill drew a beautiful arc in the air. That pill landed steadily into Lung Fengying's mouth. He looked up at her blankly. When the pill entered his mouth, an extremely bitter and spicy taste filled his mouth. Lung Fengying only felt a splitting headache. He held his head and beat it fiercely. From the beginning to the end, Yi Qing Luo had her arms crossed over her chest as she watched coldly from the sidelines. Approximately half the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Lung Fengying slowly stopped his painful howls. He fell onto the ground as he hugged his head and twisted body, slowly relaxing by quite a bit. He panted heavily as he held his head, as he slowly raised his head. What entered his eyes was a young lady dressed in red. Her flames were like fire, as though she was a fairy from the ninth heavens. Chapter 1946. The young lady in front of him and the figure in his memories slowly overlapped. Lung Fengying's pupils contracted as the hand which was supporting his head stiffened. His thin lips trembled as his hoarse voice suddenly rang. Yi Qing Luo, it's you, it's you. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up in ridicule. Sober up? He was stunned as he smelled the thick alcohol stench on him as a sliver of embarrassment surfaced on his face. He frantically climbed up from the ground as he patted his wrinkled robes. He recalled, not long ago, Yi Qingqian used a forceful attitude to ask for the West Continent's tiger talisman from his hands. And she used such humiliating words to humiliate him. But there was nothing he could do. As a crown prince, there was nothing he could do. He didn't even have the right to walk out of this luxurious palace. He only wanted to use wine to numb himself, only when he was drunk, so drunk that he had no consciousness, so that he wouldn't recall his useless side. After that, then he seemed to have seen a fairy. The fairy gave him a pill, and he... Lung Feng suddenly regained his senses. Earlier, what you fed me was a sobering pill. Otherwise, what did you think it was? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose. Poison? You don't have the right to poison me now. Lung Feng pursed his lips as his eyes shot out anger, but he clenched his fists tightly as he suppressed it deep down in his heart. Yes, based on Yi Qing Luo's current status, if she wanted to kill him, it would just be a matter of minutes. You're looking for me because you want me to do something for you? Lung Feng didn't beat around the bush. He was very curious, now that the entire West Continent was already in Yi Qingqian's hands. What other ways did Yi Qing Luo have to reverse this ending? Yi Qing Luo's lips curled as her eyes smiled calmly. Not for me, but for yourself. Lung Fengying's expression turned cold. Yi Qing Luo continued to smile. Don't tell me you're willing to let that woman who almost became your wife control your life and death? Are you really willing to hand over the West Continent's imperial court? She paused for a moment as her smile became even more ostentatious. Lung Fengying, your ambition will not allow you to be willing. As though what he was thinking in his heart was poked. Lung Fengying's fists were clenched tightly. His body was taut and his muscles were clearly defined. Yi Qing Luo saw his most direct reaction change, and her brows rose frivolously as she asked, How is it? Do you need my help? The corners of Tang Beiyuan's mouth twitched, as expected of the future mistress of their imperial palace. He really wasn't willing to suffer any losses. She took the initiative to look for Lung Fengying. No matter what, Lung Fengying should be the one to help her with this matter. In this way, after the matter was settled, Yi Qing Luo would owe Lung Fengying a favor, but under Yi Qing Luo's few words. Hence, it became Lung Fengying who needed Yi Qing Luo's help. The person who owed him a favor had evolved into Lung Fengying. The future mistress and Di Zun were a perfect match. Not only was Tang Beiyuan's lips twitching, even Lung Fengying's gaze towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with speechlessness. Perhaps he already knew Yi Qing Luo's character. Lung Fengying didn't want to argue with Yi Qing Luo over this meaningless favor. What do you want me to do? The expression on his face was no longer as dejected as before. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were filled with admiration. This Lung Fengying was indeed much smarter than Lung Fenghua. If it was Lung Fenghua, he would probably blame today's downfall on her. For example, it was because of her that he gave up on Yi Qingqian, causing Yi Qingqian to come back for revenge. However, Lung Fengying quickly adjusted his mentality. He also quickly understood which choice he should make was the most correct choice. Asterisk. Chapter 1947. This Lung Fengying was indeed more suitable for the position of monarch than Lung Fenghua. She curled her lips into a sweet smile. If you still have the will to fight, it means that you can still be saved. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were long and narrow as she smiled bewitchingly. I need your identity as the crown prince. A malicious glint flashed past Lung Fengying's gentle brows. He raised his head, his eyes flashing. All right, as long as you can help me take back the empire of the West Continent, I will do my best to satisfy your request. The horizon was pitch black. The atmosphere was gloomy and eerie. West Billow Square. Thousands of commoners were gathered in a circle. There were 3 inner layers and 3 outer layers surrounding the West Billow Square. The faces of the commoners were filled with solemnity and suppressed anger. However, they could only stand where they were, unable to act rashly. Most of these commoners were unwilling to stand here, and he was forced by Yi Qingqian to stand here and wait till midnight to start the massacre. Only a small part of the people are here because those who are tied to the altar in the square are the young and old of the Mu family. The Mu family had always practiced medicine to help the people, so they would not charge fees randomly. What's more, if they encountered a poor family, they would even receive free medical treatment. Most of the people in Shilon Square have been treated by the Mu family. Right now, the entire Mu family, old and young, was tied to the sacrificial altar. Once the midnight hour passed, they would slaughter the entire family. The commoners' hearts were filled with rage towards Yi Qingqian and the others' cruelty and cruelty. But what he hated the most was that Yi Qingluo, who had yet to appear. Yi Qingqian sat majestically by the side of the altar, lying on the luxurious and comfortable recliner. Her posture was elegant, and she didn't care about how the people around her looked at her. Yi Qingqian felt that she was extremely foolish in the past. For the sake of a false reputation, she pretended to be a gentle, virtuous, elegant, and generous young lady. They lived such a tiring life, but in the end, they still couldn't get anything good. It would be better to be like this, below one person, above tens of thousands. She could do whatever she wanted to do without any scruples. Anyway, she had her own backer. She had nothing to fear. This was a place where the strong were respected and strength was supreme. She just needed to be strong. Look, now, how colorful her life was. Everyone was afraid of her, afraid of her. She could summon clouds and rain with a flip of her hand. She could control the royal family if she wanted to. If he wanted to destroy the Three Springs sect, he could destroy the Three Springs sect. The entire Western continent was already under her control. This was the life she, Yi Qingqian, wanted. This was the life that she, Yi Qingqian, had always been yearning for. As long as Yi Qingluo was destroyed that Yi Qingluo, who had ruined her life right from the start. Her life would truly be complete. What time is it? Yi Qingqian raised her gorgeous brows and asked coldly. They had been sitting in the West Square for an entire afternoon, and Yi Qingluo's shadow was nowhere to be seen. Yi Qingqian was getting impatient. The maidservant who stood respectfully at the side answered timidly, replying to eldest miss, "It's already 9 in the evening." "Hi, sure." Yi Qingqian squinted her gorgeous eyes and muttered softly, "It's almost midnight. Does that slut Yi Qingluo not intend to appear?" She stood up slowly. Her blue flowery skirt shone with a dazzling brilliance. Her movements were like flowing water. It made Yi Qingqian look even more alluring, even though everyone was extremely resentful towards this vicious woman. But they had no choice but to admit it. Yi Qingqian, the former #1 beauty in Three Springs sect, really lived up to her reputation. That temperament, that looks. She was really unparalleled in beauty. Asterisk. Chapter 1948. Hey Ji. Yi Qingqian called out coldly and arrogantly. Hey Ji walked out from the side of the chair and bowed respectfully as she looked at Yi Qingqian. Hey Ji was the maid that the Wolf Saint Dharma had arranged to serve Yi Qingqian after she entered the dark forces. Let the night watch. The entire Three Spring City will sound the gongs. We must force Yi Qingluo out. Yi Qingqian's lips were smiling, but it seemed extremely cold. She had a delicate face and a captivating gaze. Hey Ji's heart couldn't help but be tempted by Yi Qingqian's looks. She had been following Yi Qingqian and knew her changes better than anyone else. She looked at Yi Qingqian from the original gentle and lovely person, slowly following the Wolf Saint Dharma's request, completely transforming herself into, just like her name in the dark forces, Fox Protector, a seductive and alluring demon fox. The current Yi Qingqian was indeed a vixen. Yi Qingqian's backing was the Wolf Saint Dharma. She relied on the Wolf Saint Dharma to survive, And because of this, bit by bit, she transformed herself into the image that the wolf Saint Dharma liked. Although Yi Qingqian had long given up her ego for power, Ji had to admit, this Yi Qingqian was even more dazzling than the previous Yi Qingqian. Hearing Yi Qingqian's command, Ji nodded obediently as she bowed and retreated from the altar. Not long later, the surroundings were filled with extremely loud gongs. There were almost 20 gongs. They were forced by the group of forces controlled by Yi Qingqian to scurry around the city. The gongs in her hands were banging loudly. Shouts were heard one after another. 11 o'clock, 11 o'clock. It's almost midnight. Midnight has arrived. Listening to the incessant sounds of the night watch, Mu family's patriarch Mu Zhao revealed a sullen expression as he stared at the demon fox lady and gritted his teeth. Yi Qingqian, do you know that the dark forces had long been annihilated by the imperial palace and had long become the remnants of Nirvana realm and various continents? How dare you collude with the dark forces? Others couldn't tell where this bunch of powerful cultivators came from. Mu Lai was very clear about this. His two sons were extremely attentive towards the previous young matriarch of Three Springs sect. As a result, every day when they were eating, they would hear about Yi Qing Luo's matters, with regards to those shocking things that Yi Qing Luo had done before. Mu Lai knew everything clearly. Naturally, they understood that the power which Yi Qingqian relied on was the dark forces. Mu Lai was extremely disdainful of this. Yi Qingqian proudly raised her eyebrows as she walked towards Mu Lai. Pursue and kill? Surviving members? But Patriarch Mu, this young miss has been in control of the Western continent for a full 3 days. I have tied you, a kind person who is like a bodhisattva, to the altar for several hours. Why haven't the people of the other continents appeared? She covered her mouth and laughed scornfully. How could those cowardly people sacrifice their own strength for someone else's territory? Patriarch Mu, just give up. Traitor, you traitor of the West continent. Mu Shao, the old master of the Mu family, was so angry that his white beard flew up. The Mu family had always been loyal. They had never met such a shameless person. Most of the people present knew about Yi Qingqian's identity. He was a fickle and evil person with a vicious heart. Back then, the Three Springs sect spared her life for the sake of her family. But they had not expected Yi Qingqian to take revenge on them. No one would think that Yi Qingqian's revenge was right. Asterisk. Chapter 1949. Back then, Yi Qingqian's actions, even if it took her life, it was a matter of course. Yi Qingqian would be kicked out of Three Springs sect. She had reaped the consequences of her own actions and could not blame anyone else. Grandpa Mu, I advise you to save your strength. Yi Qingqian's lips curled into an arrogant smile as she raised her brows towards Mu Shao. Why don't you plead and plead in your heart that the little slut whom you're protecting wholeheartedly will appear at midnight? After a pause, she clicked her tongue and said, However, that little bitch is very hard-hearted. For someone like you who has no interaction with her at all, I don't think she would come to her death just for you. Saying that, Yi Qingqian sighed regretfully. Actually, I don't want to treat you like this. After all, we Dark Forces need Mu family's medical skills. What a pity. My target was originally the Yi clan's 8th young master and that slut's servant girl. Who asked your Mu clan's 2 young masters to take my target away? Yi Qingqian's motive was extremely simple. Not only did she want to brainwash everyone in the Mu family, but she also wanted to brainwash the people who were watching. Everything was because of Yi Qing Luo. From the start till the end, her gaze was only on Yi Qing Luo. The fact that they would capture the Mu family was only because they were forced into a corner. She wanted to stir up everyone's disgust and hatred towards Yi Qing Luo. However, Yi Qingqian's plan was destined to fail. Yi Qingqian, do you think everyone is as cold-blooded and heartless as you? My 2 sons are doing well. It was right to save them. Our Mu family is dead. I have a clear conscience. The one who spoke was the mother of the Mu brothers, Mu Lai's only wife, Shui Fei Shue. Her words were immediately echoed by everyone in the Mu family. Death was inevitable in one's life. They were not afraid of death. On the contrary, they felt that the young master of the Yi family had made the right choice. And when it was midnight, Yi Qing Luo didn't rush to the West Lawn public square to take the risk, which was the right choice. If they came, they would really be sending themselves to their deaths. In the end, not only Yi Qing Luo died. Their Mu family would not be able to escape this calamity either. It would be better to sacrifice the Mu family now, in exchange for a chance for those young people to survive. Presumably, the affectionate and righteous woman mentioned by the two boys would treat the two boys well on account of the Mu family's sacrifice today. He looked at the Mu family with a fearless expression. Yi Qingqian's smile froze on her lips. Soon after, his expression gradually became somewhat distorted. On what basis? No matter where Yi Qingluo went, there would be people who would die for her wholeheartedly. It was obvious that the entire Mu family and Yi Qingluo had no interaction at all. As for her, even if she resorted to unscrupulous means, she would not be able to obtain the sincerity that belonged to her, whether it was in the past or now. She had never had any sincerity on the surface. The wolf saint technique looked like he doted on her, loved her and doted on her. But Yi Qingqian herself was very clear. The holy wolf did not love her sincerely at all. She didn't know why the wolf saint technique would treat her so well, so much so that just by looking at her he would be moved. But Yi Qingqian could feel it. The holy wolf technique's heart was not with her. Yi Qingqian laughed softly. There was a tinge of bitterness in her laughter. You're really the kindest person in the West Lawn continent. This miss would like to see how hard you can be for that slut. As though it was to vent the bitterness in her heart. Chapter 1950. Yi Qingqian. Mu Lai roared as his face was filled with rage. He kept struggling to get up, but the iron chains on his body didn't allow him to break free. The Mu family were all fed with the supreme profound medicine soup. Unable to use their profound energy, they had no way to resist. Mu Lai's eyes were red as he gritted his teeth and stared at Yi Qingqian. Come at me if you have the ability. The wife he loved dearly in the palm of his hand. The wife who usually couldn't bear to raise her voice. But she was slapped in front of his eyes. How could he tolerate this? Looking at Mu Lai's furious look, Yi Qingqian's heart finally felt a sense of pleasure. She giggled as she walked towards Shui Fei Shue, who was sent flying on the ground. Her gorgeous face revealed a vicious sneer. What's the point of coming at you? It's more interesting if I hit her and you feel heartache. She leaned over and grabbed Shui Fei Shue's hair. She lifted Shui Fei Shue up harshly. Shui Fei Shue had been in the pugilistic world, and even after many years of marriage, the pugilistic world spirit was still there. Even if her scalp was in pain, she didn't make a sound. Mu Lai clenched his teeth as his eyes turned red. He struggled with all his might, wanting to rush up and tear Yi Qingqian into pieces. But no matter how hard he tried, his hands and body were still bleeding from the friction of the chains. There was no way he could escape from the iron chains. The onlookers stared at the scene. Their hearts were burning with rage, but there was nothing they could do. Previously, there was a cultivator who had been saved by the Mu family who wanted to save the Mu family. But before he got close to the altar, he was cut into pieces by that lady who looked like a demon fox. It was really 1,000 cuts. Not one more cut, not one less cut. Right on the West Square, in front of thousands of people. The methods were bloody and cruel, leaving a shadow in everyone's mind. She wanted to save the Mu family, but she was afraid of the consequences. Mu Lai's actions obviously made Yi Qingqian happy. Her 5 fingers clasped Shui Fei Shue's chin as she looked down at the woman who was obviously in her 30s, but still young and beautiful. It said that a man loves a woman only because of her good looks. I really want to prove this saying. Yi Qingqian's lips curled into a sinister smile. Madame Mu say, "If I were to leave a few scars on your face, would your husband still regard you as his life?" Shui Fei Xue sneered and spat on her face. "Go ahead and try." Yi Qingqian's eyes were filled with coldness. She suddenly tightened her grip. Shui Fei Xue's face turned pale. The sharp pain in her lower jaw made her sweat profusely. Yi Qingqian raised her other hand and wiped the saliva off her face. Suddenly, he took out a dagger from somewhere and placed it on Shui Fei Xue's face. "I'll fulfill your wish." "Yi Qingqian, how dare you? Don't you dare touch her. I will never let you off." Perhaps it was because of his rage, Mu Lai broke free from the shackles of the chains. His hands and the places where the chains were entangled were covered in blood. He didn't mind as he pounced in front of Yi Qingqian and pushed her away fiercely. Yi Qingqian had not expected the Mu family to break free from the chains. She couldn't react in time and was hit by Mu Lai. Yi Qingqian fell onto the ground. And because of this collision, Mu Lai hugged Shui Fei Xue and fell onto the ground. The supreme profound medicine in his body had long expelled his profound energy and strength out of his body. After Mu Lai fell onto the ground, he no longer had any strength. The guards at the side saw that something had happened to Yi Qingqian and rushed forward to surround the altar. Yi Qingqian got up with the help of the maid. Her sinister eyes looked coldly at the man and woman who were hugging each other tightly. The flames burning in her eyes became more and more vigorous. "What a pair of lovers! I'll fulfill the affection between you. After midnight, I'll be the first to deal with the two of you." Yi Qingqian strode to the side of Mu Lai and his wife and looked down at them condescendingly. "Now, I'll teach you what a well-behaved and sensible captive is." Chapter 1951. A pair of lovers? Her biggest hobby now was to break up lovers and torture lovers. To see two people who loved each other unable to be together. The flames in Yi Qingqian's eyes were filled with a horrifying madness. She flipped her palm and a long whip, which was flickering with profound yin qi, appeared in her palm. Yi Qingqian squinted her beautiful eyes as her lips curled into a sneer. After instructing the night watch, Heiji, who was returning to the altar, looked at that long whip and her heart suddenly trembled. This long whip was the cursed magic weapon that Wolf Saint Dharma had gifted to Yi Qingqian, Dark Illusion Whip. This was one of the dark magic weapons. Compared to those so-called divine artifacts, its power could only be greater. Moreover, it had the ability to devour curses and darkness. Yi Qingqian rarely took out the Dark Illusion Whip. It could be seen that Yi Qingqian was really angry. Heiji suppressed the uneasiness in her heart as she lowered her head and returned to the reclining chair. Mu Lai saw the profound yin qi lingering on that long whip, and his expression suddenly changed. He was from the Mu family, which was one of the 4 great families, even if he couldn't tell what kind of magic weapon it was. But he was very clear in his heart. Once they were hit by the magic weapon, they were human shells without any profound qi. They were unable to withstand the magic power of the magic weapon. What's more, there was a possibility that their souls would scatter. Mu Lai used the last of his strength to block Shui Fei Xue behind him. A pair of red eyes stared at Yi Qingqian resentfully. "Yi Qingqian, my son cares about his mother the most. If you do anything to Fei Xue, don't even think of using us to force Yi Qing Luo out." Finally anxious, Yi Qingqian laughed crazily. The long whip in her hand was like a poisonous snake as she looked ahead vigilantly, waiting for the opportunity to move. "On the account that you are so protective of your wife, I will satisfy you." Her words just ended. Suddenly the long whip shook. Everyone saw a long whip which looked like a black poisonous snake flying straight over. That long whip was close to Mu Lai at the moment. Suddenly a burst of profound yin qi was set off. Bam! The long whip lashed on Mu Lai's face, leaving a bloody mark. The blood was mixed with black, mysterious yin qi, which was corroding his wounds. Mu Lai's body fell heavily to the ground. Xiao! There was another sound of the whip tearing through the air. Fei Shua's body was swept up by the long whip and thrown into the air. Yi Qingqian's hand that was holding onto the long whip suddenly gave it a tug. Fei Shua fell heavily from the sky, with the pull of the long whip. Their falling speed was also extremely fast. Boom! With a loud thud, the entire altar was smashed into a huge pit. Crushed stones flew everywhere, and smoke and dust rose in spirals, covering everything on the altar. Mu Lai struggled to get up and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Flying snow! Flying snow!" With every shout, he coughed out a mouthful of blood. When the old and young of the Mu family saw this, all of them were so infuriated that green veins popped out, wishing that they could break free from the iron chains and rush up to kill Yi Qingqian. That height, that kind of strength. How could an ordinary person without any Xian Qi withstand it? Moreover, the altar had collapsed. Fei Shua was afraid. Everyone's mood suddenly became heavy. Eldest young miss. Eldest young miss. Just as the atmosphere was inexplicably oppressive, the anger in the hearts of the people was also provoked and could not be tolerated. On the altar, a panicked voice suddenly sounded. Chapter 1952. As the dust dispersed, everyone stared at that maidservant. Wasn't she the maidservant named Heiji, who had always been by Yi Qingqian's side? Eldest young miss? Wasn't it Yi Qingqian who threw Madame Mu into the ground with a whip? Why was it Yi Qingqian who fell into the deep pit? This turn of events left the commoners dumbfounded. Could it be that Fei Shua had suddenly recovered her profound energy? Just as everyone was dumbstruck, a figure flew out from that huge deep pit. Carrying a terrifying profound energy, it broke through the clouds. A long blue dress drew a blue arc in midair. Like flowing water, it reflected the sunlight and emitted a clear and crystalline light. That person, other than Yi Qingqian, who else could it be? The person who fell into the deep pit and smashed into the deep pit was really Yi Qingqian. Everyone stared at Yi Qingqian, who was standing steadily on the altar, only to see Yi Qingqian in a sorry state. Her meticulously made-up hair had long been disheveled under that heavy impact, like weeds, messy beyond compare. That beautiful face was ashen. Vaguely, it could be seen that her ice-like skin had a few scratches. It was obvious that Yi Qingqian's injury was not light. What was going on? Mu Lai, who was at a close distance, couldn't help but widen his eyes as he stared at Yi Qingqian in shock. After some time, he regained his senses and immediately climbed to the side of the deep pit, which was smashed out. Sticking his head out to take a look, there was a huge, deep pit, deep into the ground. It was pitch black, and he couldn't see the shadow of the underground. But Mu Lai could feel that there was no one there. Fei Shua was not in the deep pit. Yi Qingluo, you finally appeared. Yi Qingqian's angry voice suddenly rang. Everyone looked towards the direction of the voice. They saw Yi Qingqian with a twisted face, staring at a certain place behind the altar. Looking closely, it could be seen that Yi Qingqian's petite body was trembling constantly. Her slender fingers clenched into fists. Yi Qingluo. Was Yi Qingluo here? Everyone's heart trembled as they opened their eyes wide to look for traces of Yi Qingluo. Big sister is quite sharp. You actually know that I'm here. A clear laughter rang out, like pearls and jade falling from a plate. His laughter drifted with the wind. A slim figure appeared out of thin air. The young girl's flaming dress made her crystal-clear skin look even whiter and more tender, like an exquisite porcelain doll. Her eyebrows were like a painting, and her eyebrows were thin and dark. Her beauty could topple cities. That otherworldly temperament even though he was just silently hovering in the air. Everyone had the urge to kneel down and worship the goddess. What shocked everyone even more was, in the young girl's arms was a woman in disheveled clothes who was in an extremely sorry state. Wasn't that Shui Fei Shue? As it turned out, just as Yi Qingjian was about to throw Shui Fei Shue into the ground and forcefully smash Shui Fei Shue to death, was it Yi Qing Luo who took action? Not only did she save Shui Fei Shue, and even blasted Yi Qing Qian into the ground. Looking across the entire Shilin Square, thousands of people, thousands of pairs of eyes, not a single one of them noticed Yi Qing Luo's appearance. Yi Qing Luo, how powerful was she exactly? That was Yi Qing Luo, the young lady who shocked the 4 continents and was hailed as a legend by everyone. She actually really appeared. It was as if there was a huge drum beating in the hearts of the commoners. Yi Qing Luo slowly stood on the altar as she placed Shui Fei Shue down. Her hand was still supporting Shui Fei Shue as her lips curled slightly as she smiled sweetly. Madamu, are you feeling better? Chapter 1953. This matter started because of me. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have suffered such humiliation. Yi Qing Luo supported Shui Fei Shue and sent her to Mu Lai's side. Leave the rest to me. Mu Lai's hands trembled as he hugged Shui Fei Shue. Both husband and wife's gazes fell onto Yi Qing Luo without blinking. The young lady's smile was bright and beautiful, with a devilish charm and wanton. But when she said the sentence, the Mu couple obviously saw the chilling, murderous intent in the young lady's pupils. No matter who it was, they would be stunned by that beautiful face. This was the lady who made their 2 sons infatuated. Their 2 sons' eyesight was indeed not bad. Miss Yi. Shui Fei Shue opened her mouth. Her gaze was filled with worry. Before she finished her sentence, Yi Qing Luo had already looked at her. Her shimmering eyes flickered with a hint of gloomy luster. Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly, at an angle that Yi Qing Qian couldn't see. She winked at Shui Fei Shue slyly. Immediately she said, Zifan and Zifei are fine. You don't have to worry. Now you should worry about yourselves. Yi Qing Qian's sharp, hateful voice was heard from behind. A burst of cold, profound yin qi pressed towards them. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as her fingers flicked. The feather fan opened up on her fingertips and rolled up a hurricane. The 2 forces collided and the profound qi particles exploded in midair. Yi Qing Luo leisurely turned around. Her expression was calm as she looked at Yi Qing Qian teasingly. Tisk tisk, eldest sister is still as impatient as usual. No wonder. You will always be my defeated opponent. You. Yi Qing Qian was so angry that she gritted her teeth. The moment she saw Yi Qing Luo, the anger in her heart surged uncontrollably. She couldn't wait to peel off Yi Qing Luo's tendons and skin her, to destroy everything Yi Qing Luo had. Let's see what Yi Qing Luo had to be arrogant in front of her, flaunting her prowess. The more she thought, the more the resentment in Yi Qing Qian's heart grew. Her sharp eyes turned cold as she attacked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Then let everyone take a good look and see who is the loser. The long whip in Yi Qing Qian's hand cracked loudly in the air. There was no hesitation in her attacks at all. As though he wanted to kill Yi Qing Luo in one strike, Yi Qing Luo sneered as she leapt forward. The glowing flame fan unfurled and launched an attack. As she intertwined with Yi Qing Jian, she lured Yi Qing Jian to the other side of the altar. Yi Qing Qian was most familiar with her whip skills, plus the power of the cursed magic tool. Yi Qing Qian's attack was totally unstoppable. He could easily injure the others on the altar. When she saw the cursed magic tool, Old Song had given her some information about it in his mind. Cursed magic tools were extremely evil among darkness magic tools. His strength surpassed that of a divine artifact. He also has the evil power of darkness. Usually, people who used cursed magic tools were either demons or on the verge of becoming demons. They were all bloodthirsty, murderous demons. Cursed magic tools were the most frightening. Even wounds inflicted by demonic artifacts would be corroded by demonic chi. It would be fine if he dealt with it in time. If it wasn't handled properly, the demonic artifact would corrode everything in the human body and eventually turn into white bones. Earlier, the Dark Illusion Whip had whipped Mu Lai. From the wound on Mu Lai's face, Yi Qing Luo had almost determined the degree of demonic chi brought by the Dark Illusion Whip. She narrowed her eyes as the glowing flame fan in her hand waved continuously. Asterisk. Chapter 1954. The raging flame fan was like a flame, jumping around Yi Qing Luo's fingertips. Vaguely, as Yi Qing Luo's movements became bigger, the sparks turned into a huge fire dragon in a split second. Following that, the raging flame fan shot out numerous slender silver threads, entangling towards Yi Qing Qian's direction. Yi Qing Luo, do you think you can still trap me now? Yi Qing Qian snorted coldly. The resentment in her eyes was extremely cold. The dark magic whip in her hand swam strangely, piercing through the air, looking sharper than a sharp blade. That whip lashed fiercely on the altar. It could pull out numerous long whip marks that were deeply embedded in the ground. Had to admit, Yi Qing Qian's whip skills, coupled with the power of the cursed magic weapon. One after another, the long whip struck towards Yi Qing Luo's face fiercely. The angle of the long whip was very tricky. Yi Qing Qian obviously wanted to ruin Yi Qing Luo's looks. And Yi Qing Luo's figure was agile. Her footwork almost made her come and go without a trace. Yi Qing Qian could not even touch the corner of Yi Qing Luo's clothes. On the contrary, Yi Qing Qian herself, under Yi Qing Luo's teasing time and time again, the hurricane and profound energy which Yi Qing Luo unleashed broke that exquisite and gorgeous long dress which was like water ripples. Bright red blood oozed out from the wound. Yi Qing Qian bared her teeth in anger. Her expression was sinister, staring fiercely at Yi Qing Luo's direction. The long whip was going to take Yi Qing Luo's life. However, the long whip's lightning-fast attack had yet to come close. Yi Qing Luo disappeared again. Yi Qing Luo, if you have the ability, don't try to escape like a turtle. Yi Qing Qian gritted her teeth in anger. She felt like a pet being teased. Yi Qing Luo snorted lightly, standing 3 steps away from Yi Qing Qian, squinting at her. In that case, eldest sister wants to fight with me openly. Staring at Yi Qing Luo's clear eyes, Yi Qing Qian's heart was overwhelmed with a feeling of horror. Fight her fair and square? Yi Qing Qian's sinister eyes turned cold as her murderous aura appeared. That's right. Then I shall fulfill sister's wish. Yi Qing Luo chuckled lightly, like a warm breeze, blowing against everyone's eardrums. The beautiful girl was as enchanting as a painting. In the next instant, he disappeared into thin air. Yi Qing Luo had unknowingly stood in front of Yi Qing Qian. They were face to face, extremely close to one another. Yi Qing Qian was so shocked that she took a step back and let out an awe scream. Before he could react, Yi Qing Luo's lips were already curling into a smile. Her bottomless enchanting eyes seemed to be swirling with a whirlpool. Yi Qing Qian was so shocked that her heart almost jumped out of her throat. Her face was pale, and she kept retreating. However, Yi Qing Luo had already waved her fist and directly punched Yi Qing Qian's face. Pum! A punch landed. It did not carry the slightest bit of profound energy. It was a solid punch. Yi Qing Qian's nose spurted out a stream of blood. In an instant, it dyed Yi Qing Qian's exquisite face. Boom! There was another loud noise. Yi Qingqian fell straight onto the altar. Her nose was bleeding, her robe was full of scratches, and blood splattered everywhere. She was thrown onto the ground in a sorry state. The current Yi Qingqian was in a sorry state no matter how one looked at it. Where was the slightest bit of his previous elegance, arrogance, and despotic demeanor from before? The surrounding commoners couldn't help but burst out laughing. They expressed that although they didn't have any good impression of Yi Qing Luo, but seeing them torturing Yi Qingqian, they felt great. Someone should take care of that vicious woman. Asterisk. Chapter 1955. Yi Qing Luo walked slowly to the front of Yi Qingjian. She looked down at Yi Qingjian from above. Just like before, Yi Qingjian looked down at Mulai, that high and mighty, insufferably arrogant, as if she was looking at an ant. Yi Qingjian only felt a surge of blood in her chest. A mouthful of blood gushed out from her throat. She stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo, her eyes filled with hatred. Yi Qing Luo's eyes curved into crescents as her lips curled into a faint, cold arc of ridicule, as though she was ridiculing her for overestimating herself. What a pity, elder sister. Even if it's just and above board, I can still face you. Her light voice was mixed with endless mockery. Yi Qingjian's whole body tensed up, trembling violently. It was angry. Yi Qingjian was so angry that her whole body was trembling. She couldn't believe that Yi Qing Luo was so powerful. She thought that with the wolf saint technique, threatening the pharaoh, using the dark arts to give her a steady stream of profound yin qi, so that she could continue to upgrade her profound grade. The current her strength could totally reach the level of a sky mystic supreme, coupled with the dark magic whip that the wolf saint technique gave her. No matter what, to defeat Yi Qing Luo, it was totally effortless. But in fact, the one who fell to the ground was her, Sky Mystic Supreme. Looking at the entire Nirvana realm, the number of people who could reach the Sky Mystic Supreme could be counted with 2 hands. Of course, there were many experts who liked to live incognito. But no matter how many people there were who hid their identities, there was only one problem. Sky Mystic Supreme was rare in the world. Yi Qingjian would never believe it. Yi Qing Luo, a waste for 15 years, could be more powerful than a Sky Mystic Supreme in such a short period of time. There must be someone secretly helping Yi Qing Luo. It must be so. Yi Qingjian kept finding excuses to numb herself, looking at Yi Qing Luo's face filled with ridicule and ridicule. She gritted her teeth and suddenly got up from the ground. The blue water pattern dress was like rolling waves. The ripples of the flowing water were so bright. Yi Qing Luo had already guessed what Yi Qingjian wanted to do. At this time, even if she chased up, it would be too late. She simply stood on the spot, looking at Yi Qingjian with a smile. It was as if he was watching a monkey show. After Yi Qingqian left Yi Qing Luo's attack range, her figure stretched out as she headed straight towards the direction where the Mu family's old and young were tied up in a row. Her gloomy eyes were burning with rage. She quickly stretched out her hand and grabbed old Master Mu. The long whip in her hand was placed across old Master Mu's neck. Yi Qing Luo, how dare you? Don't forget, the Mu family is in my hands. Father, old man. Mu family's old and young cried out in shock as they looked at Yi Qingqian anxiously. These cries of surprise pleased Yi Qingjian. She hooked her arms around old Master Mu's neck and unlocked the iron chain. Then, step by step, she walked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Yi Qing Luo, drink the supreme profound medicine soup. Yi Qingqian glanced sideways. Hey, Ji understood, and immediately took out a medicine bottle from her waist. That medicine bottle was thrown towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she quietly watched the medicine bottle drop beside her feet. The smile on her lips was tainted with a trace of cold ridicule. Yi Qingqian raged as she pressed the long whip against old Master Mu's neck even tighter. Slut! If you don't drink the supreme profound medicine soup, I will kill old Master Mu right in front of you. Asterisk. Chapter 1956. Despicable. Shameless. When the commoners heard that, they clenched their fists in anger as they stared fiercely at Yi Qingqian's direction. This woman was truly a first-class poisonous woman. The commoners had witnessed Yi Qing Luo's ability earlier. Thinking of those rumors about Yi Qing Luo, these commoners who were blaming Yi Qing Luo had no choice but to place their hopes on her. Only Yi Qing Luo could kill Yi Qingqian. Only Yi Qing Luo could save the West Continent. If Yi Qing Luo drank the profound medicine soup, wouldn't she be at Yi Qingqian's mercy? Moreover, based on Yi Qingqian's vicious temperament, even if Yi Qing Luo really listened to her and drank the profound medicine soup, Yi Qingqian would never let the Mu family off. But if Yi Qing Luo didn't drink the profound medicine soup, the Mu family would still have to die. How should Yi Qing Luo choose? The commoners placed their hopeful gazes on Yi Qing Luo. The atmosphere at this moment became extremely oppressive. Yi Qingqian obviously knew what everyone was thinking. She raised her lips. That face, which was covered by messy long hair, still couldn't hide the murderous intent she was giving off. What she wanted was exactly like this. No matter what Yi Qing Luo chose, Yi Qing Luo would eventually become the sinner of the West Continent. She wanted to destroy the West Continent, destroy the continent which used to laugh at her. Moreover, she wanted to push the destruction of the West Continent to Yi Qing Luo alone. She wanted Yi Qing Luo to be condemned by thousands of people. In the historical records, it was a calamity which brought calamity to the country and people. Yi Qing Luo, I don't have that much patience to wait for your decision. Old Master Mu's life is in your hands. Yi Qingqian screamed sharply, her eyes filled with complacency. Lass, don't listen to her. I'm already so old. I've lived enough. Don't worry about me. Just do it and kill this little slut. Mu Xiao spat. He wasn't afraid of the dark, illusory whip on his neck at all. Shut up. Yi Qingqian increased the strength of the magic whip. The magic whip, which was surrounded by black qi, drew a line of blood on old Master Mu's neck. Immediately, her eyes flashed with madness. Yi Qing Luo, immediately pick up the profound medicine soup and drink it. Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes and stared at the medicine bottle by her feet as she pushed it with her toes. The medicine bottle rolled on the altar, emitting a clear, gurgling sound. The breeze swirled her loose black hair around her shoulders. Her red dress was burning like a raging flame. The peerlessly beautiful and enchanting young lady slowly raised her head. Her charming eyes were flowing with light, as she looked at Yi Qingqian with a smile that didn't look like a smile. She curled her lips and chuckled. The laughter was mixed with extreme mockery and disdain. You, what are you laughing at? Yi Qingqian's heart trembled. An inexplicable fear towards Yi Qing Luo welled up in her heart again. Yi Qing Luo stared fixedly at Yi Qingqian as she crossed her arms over her chest and gave an incomparably calm smile. Why don't you give it a try? Smart eldest sister, you should be very clear that once you hurt anyone from the Mu family, the consequences, what would be, right? She deliberately raised her eyebrows and dragged out the last word. The threat was obvious. Yi Qingqian was so infuriated that her body tensed up, but the magic whip which was stuck on Mu Zhao's neck was unable to move. She understood. Of course she understood. Once she killed Mu Xiao, what would be the consequences? Now she had the entire Mu family in her hands, so Yi Qing Luo didn't dare to act rashly. But if she killed one of them, Yi Qing Luo would absolutely strike her without any qualms. Yi Qing Luo, that slut, actually thought of such a despicable idea. Asterisk. Chapter 1957. When the commoners heard Yi Qing Luo's words, initially they didn't react to what she meant. Later on, looking at Yi Qing Qian's expression, they were suddenly enlightened. Momentarily, the commoners were filled with emotions. This 15-year-old young lady who was hailed as a legend indeed lived up to her reputation. Under such circumstances, her brain could still move so quickly. Not only did she ensure the safety of the Mu family, she even threatened Yi Qing Qian instead, even though Yi Qing Qian held the lives of the Mu family in her hands. But Yi Qing Luo could still be on the same status as her. What kind of boldness did she have to be able to do this to such an extent? If it was them, they would absolutely not have this boldness and the guts to use the lives of the Mu family as a threat instead. If Yi Qing Luo knew what the commoners were thinking about, she would definitely touch her chin as she gave an evil smile. Foolish humans, you're still too inexperienced. How could she, Yi Qing Luo, possibly just simply threaten someone who dared to threaten her? Yi Qing Qian was extremely infuriated, but she indeed didn't dare to act rashly. Her expression was gloomy as she looked at Mu Xiao, who had a fearless expression and was still looking at her with ridicule. Forcefully suppressing the surging anger in her heart, a glint flashed past her eyes. Yi Qing Luo, did you really think that I only have the Mu family as a bargaining chip? She clasped Mu Xiao's neck tightly as her long whip danced, pointing towards the surroundings of West Lawn Square, towards those thousands of commoners. These are all my bargaining chips. Yi Qing Qian's words had just landed, not knowing when. Waves after waves of profound yin qi had surged over from the vicinity of West Lawn Square. Those profound yin qi brought along a sinister cold storm as it wantonly plundered everything around it. In just a short moment, it had covered the entire West Lawn Square tightly. Following that, the entire crowd of commoners were surrounded by a total of 200 dark forces, black robes. You, Yi Qing Qian, you despicable woman. Dark forces. These are all people from the dark forces. What are you trying to do? Yi Qing Qian, do you want all of us to become the dark forces' food? When the commoners saw those 200 black robed remnants, their expressions had a huge change. These black robed remnants had obviously been lying in ambush in the surroundings. He had been waiting for this moment. The commoners actually knew clearly in their hearts that they were forced to stand by the side of the public square by Yi Qing Qian was actually for convenience, so that Yi Qing Qian could kill them on the spot. But when he saw so many black-robed survivors, the people's hearts couldn't help but tremble in fear. Yi Qing Qian allowed those people to accuse and abuse her. In her eyes, there was only Yi Qing Luo alone. She stared sinisterly at Yi Qing Luo, hoping to see a sliver of panic and fear on Yi Qing Luo's face. But after staring at Yi Qing Luo for some time, she was disappointed. When Yi Qing Luo saw the surrounding black, robed remnants, the expression on her face didn't change at all. He seemed to have guessed that such a thing would happen. This really made Yi Qing Jian feel as though she had used all her strength to hit a ball of soft cotton. Not only did it not let her vent the anger in her heart, on the contrary, it made her feel even more aggrieved. Yi Qing Qian was annoyed, so annoyed that her entire heart was burning. A pair of fox-like, beautiful eyes gradually exuded mysterious yin qi. Wisps of mysterious yin qi swirled in her eyes. A strong, murderous intent shot out. Chapter 1958. The dark illusory whip was laced with a dense, profound yin qi. In the air, it gave off a piercing sound. When it landed heavily, the entire altar was embedded several meters deep as black qi curled up, which was extremely horrifying. The commoners instinctively screamed out in fear as they retreated a few steps, but they were pressured by the 200 black, robed remnants behind them till they couldn't even take half a step back. Yi Qing Qian gave a cold laugh as she pinched Mu Zhao's shoulder, and with a leap, she charged towards the direction of those commoners. She wanted Yi Qing Luo to see it with her own eyes. How she wanted her to see with her own eyes how she killed those commoners. She wanted Yi Qing Luo to think about it all the time. Those innocent commoners all died because of her, Yi Qing Luo. Ha! Behind her, Yi Qing Luo's leisurely laughter was filled with ridicule, as it was filled with endless ridicule. Her slender brows rose slightly as her brows revealed a flirtatious expression, which made her look extremely alluring. This wasn't a 15-year-old young lady's temperament and charm, but when it was on Yi Qing Luo, it seemed to be natural. Yi Qing Qian, do you really think that everything is under your control? The young lady's sweet voice was mixed with a sweet smile, as though it was just a simple conversation. But her words made one feel a chill in one's heart. Immediately after, the young lady giggled. Unfortunately, wherever I'm around, you're destined to lose control, because you'll forever be my supporting role, forever to be stepped on by me. Her voice paused and her tone suddenly changed, extremely incisive as she said word by word, don't turn over. Arrogant and presumptuous words, insolent and unbridled ridicule. Yi Qing Qian was even more annoyed hearing that. Her eyes were burning with fury, as all her thoughts were placed on those commoners. The dark, illusory whip in her hands was like 10,000 poisonous snakes as it madly swept towards the commoners. Ah! Suddenly, a miserable shriek was heard. The originally arrogant Yi Qing Qian had yet to make a move when her body crashed heavily onto the side of the altar. Following that, she was hit by the side and fell below the altar, right beside those commoners' feet. The commoners retreated frantically as if they had touched the plague, and they screamed in disgust. That poisonous snake, which had yet to fly out, also retracted back because of Yi Qing Qian's death. Yi Qing Qian fell onto the ground as the dark illusion whip lost the support of the profound energy and was like a dead object as it circled around Yi Qing Qian. She abruptly stood up and fearfully stared at Mu Shao, who was floating in midair and laughing out loud. How could you, just now, just as she was about to attack the commoners? It was Mu Shao who took advantage of the moment when she was in a fit of rage and anxiously attacked her chest with his palm. This caused her, who had almost gone berserk, to shatter the condensation of her profound qi. The backlash from the profound yin aura caused her internal organs to feel an intense pain. Not just Grandpa, but also us. At some point, the 14 people of the Mu family who were tied up in chains stood up. They were supporting each other, and their imposing manner was overbearing as they stared coldly at Yi Qing Qian. The profound qi that lingered around each of them was fluctuating. At the very least, they were all profound practitioners who were above the 3rd grade of the Earth Profound realm. The commoners sighed in their hearts. No wonder they were one of the 4 great profound families, the Mu family. Not only did they have outstanding abilities in terms of alchemy and treatment, even his own profound strength was maintained at a level that could only be high and not low. Looking at the aggressive people of the Mu family, Mu Chi-Chi was stunned. Chapter 1959. She had obviously witnessed the Mu family being fed the supreme profound medicine soup with her own eyes. She had also tested it personally. The Mu family's profound energy had indeed been sealed. She was waiting for Yi Qing Luo to come to the West Square, in front of Yi Qing Luo, to cripple the Mu family's meridians, brutally killing them. How could the Mu family's profound energy be restored? This was impossible. Where did the deviation go? Looking at Yi Qing Qian's distorted face, extremely pale and filled with disbelief, Shui Fei Shui gave a light snort. With Mu Lai's support, she slowly walked out. Her slender, jade-like fingers pinched a medicine bottle. She shook it and sneered, "This is all thanks to Miss Qing Luo for giving me the antidote for the supreme, profound medicine soup." Shui Fei Shui's heart was filled with admiration towards Yi Qing Luo. This kind of admiration had already surpassed the boundaries of age. no matter if Yi Qing Luo was just a 15-year-old young lady. Shui Fei Shui's respect towards Yi Qing Luo was from the bottom of her heart. The antidote for the supreme profound medicine soup was secretly given to her by Yi Qing Luo when she first appeared and saved her. When Yi Qing Luo saved her, the profound medicine soup on her had already been cured. After that, while Yi Qing Luo attracted Yi Qing Qian's attention, she fed the antidote to the Mu family. While Yi Qing Luo was intentionally provoking Yi Qing Qian, constantly attracting her attention, they had already taken the opportunity to adjust the profound energy in their bodies. Shui Fei Shui's gaze towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with gentleness. If this lass could become the Mu family's daughter-in-law, how good would that be? Her ability was strong, and she had extremely high attainments in medicinal pills. Unfortunately, her two brats were not worthy of this lass. Mu Lai saw through his beloved wife's thoughts with one look. He smiled helplessly, holding Shui Fei Shui's hand tightly. Now was not the time to think about these things. After Mu Lai's reminder, Shui Fei Shui finally straightened her expression, raised her brows, and looked at Yi Qing Qian. Yi Qing Qian, as the eldest missy of Three Springs sect, you borrowed the dark forces to destroy Three Springs sect, and even the entire West Continent. This is unforgivable. My Mu family absolutely won't let you off easily. Mu Xiao stood in front of the young and old of the Mu family, full of dignity. I, Mu Xiao, have retired from the martial world for many years, but today, in order to restore peace to the West Wave continent, I, Mu Xiao, will do everything in my power to expel your dark forces from the West Wave continent. Although the Mu family is the most low-key among the four great families, he had always focused on medicine shops and medical centers. However, when they worked together and released their might, it was enough to intimidate everyone present. The hearts of the people also seemed to be ignited by the Mu family. Yi Qing Qian turned pale with fright. She looked at everyone in the Mu family. Their faces were filled with anger, as if they wanted to tear her into pieces. Her heart trembled violently. No, today was her home court. How could she possibly allow Yi Qing Luo to retaliate? She, Yi Qing Qian, was the real main character. In the West Continent, she could summon clouds and rain with a flip of her hand. Everyone had submitted to her power. She would not fail. She still had the dark forces. She didn't believe that the guards of the West Continent plus the dark forces couldn't defeat a dozen Mu family members. What's more, she still had millions of people as a bargaining chip. Based on the kind temperament of the Mu family, they absolutely wouldn't dare to make a move easily. She still had a backup plan, as long as she could drag on till the Wolf Saint technique rushed over. Yi Qing Luo and this group of people who didn't know what's good for them had to die. All of them had to die. With this thought in mind, Yi Qing Qian immediately dashed towards the direction of those people. Asterisk. Chapter 1960. Mu family, as long as one of you makes a move, I will kill a commoner. Yi Qing Qian's hoarse voice bellowed hysterically. She rushed to the front of the commoners. The long whip rolled, and 10 of her commoners were sucked into the whip. The commoners' faces revealed a terrified expression as they screamed. Yi Qing Qian whipped the long whip fiercely and pulled those 10 of her commoners towards her. She turned her head, and a maniacal smile surfaced on her malevolent face. You still want to scheme against me? As long as you still have a conscience, you will never be able to defeat me. Mu family's old and young's faces sunk. They clenched their fists tightly as they suppressed the anger that was about to explode. Yi Qing Qian had indeed grabbed hold of their weakness. They were concerned about the commoners, and there was no way they could disregard the innocent commoners, especially when they saw those commoners' terrified expressions. This made them even more worried that they would not be able to do anything to Yi Qing Qian. Mu Zhao's face flushed red. He had lived for so long, and this was the first time he had met such a shameless and vicious woman. looking at those commoners' pleading eyes, listening to those commoners' terrified cries. Mu Xiao clenched his fists tightly as his veins popped out and every piece of muscle was tensed up. In the end, he couldn't stand the commoners' cries. He turned his gaze towards Yi Qing Luo, Miss Qing Luo. Mu family's old and young sighed slightly. They had not expected that, as the older generation of the four great families, they had to seek help from a 15-year-old young lady when they met with trouble. Yi Qing Luo's lips hung a faintly discernible smile. Her arms crossed her chest as her sweet voice had no trace of nervousness. "Old master, don't worry." 5 simple words totally didn't explain what she would do. But for no reason, it made Mu families old and young heaved a sigh of relief as they felt inexplicably at ease. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose frivolously as her eyes were filled with smiles as she stared straight at Yi Qing Qian. Yi Qing Luo hadn't said a word. Yi Qing Qian, who met Yi Qing Luo's gaze, was the first to fly into a rage. "Yi Qing Luo, don't you care about the commoners' lives? Then let's try and see if you kill me first, or I kill all these commoners first." Yi Qing Luo was still smiling. She didn't move, just using that kind of smiling yet not smiling, examining gaze, quietly and faintly staring at Yi Qing Jian. This kind of gaze made Yi Qing Qian almost go crazy. But at this moment, among the crowd of commoners, a loud and clear voice suddenly rang. "Yi Qing Qian, you destroyed our home, and now you want to make use of us to threaten Madame Yi Qing Luo. Even if we die, we won't let you do whatever you want. We owe the Mu family a great debt of gratitude. Usually, they spent all their wealth for us. Today, I want the Mu family to sacrifice their lives for us. I can't do it. Yi Qing Qian, even an ant can swallow an elephant. Even if you're cultivators, no matter how powerful you are, so what? We have millions of companions." One after another, the rousing cries stirred up everyone's hearts. Following the impassioned speeches of those people, the people seemed to be reminded of the Mu family, how they usually did good deeds and served the people wholeheartedly. Today, they wanted the Mu family to once again be controlled by that wicked woman, Yi Qing Qian? No, they could not stand by and watch as the Mu family was once again controlled by others. Moreover, that person was right. Ants could swallow an elephant, although their strength was small. But they had the advantage in numbers. Before Yi Qing Qian could react, a group of commoners suddenly went crazy as they charged towards her. Yi Qing Qian was forcefully pressed onto the ground by 10 over people. Losing the support of profound energy, the illusion whip loosened its grip on those 10 over commoners. Asterisk. Chapter 1961. "Ah, you bunch of damned, lowly commoners. How dare you hit me? Do you believe that I will make you AH? AH?" Yi Qing Qian's miserable cries rang. Those frenzied commoners didn't give Yi Qing Qian any chance to react. Even if Yi Qing Luo wanted to release her profound qi to shake off those commoners, the minute her profound qi was released, before she could shake off the commoners, there were commoners who accurately pressed on her pulse. Following that, the commoners' bodies and those tyrannical fists landed on her. She had no way to raise her concentration and release her profound qi to resist. Yi Qing Qian struggled for a few moments, and under the frenzied violence of the commoners, she could only beg bitterly. However, those commoners' eyes were already red from the beating. They couldn't wait to kill Yi Qing Qian directly and have a quick death. How could they possibly let Yi Qing Qian off just because she begged for mercy? Who asked you to be so arrogant? Who asked you to be so arrogant? Who asked you to use your status as a cultivator to strut around? Who asked you to capture the Mu family's old and young to threaten Yi Qing Luo? Who asked you to still want to kill us? If I don't beat you up till you are covered with injuries, if I don't beat you up till you kneel down and call me daddy, I won't have the face to call myself a commoner. The anger and resentment in the hearts of the common people were instantly appeased. There was no mercy in her attacks, even with the cultivator's qi protecting her. Under the furious beating of hundreds of commoners, Yi Qingqian could only inhale, but not exhale. This scene made the Mu family's old and young dumbstruck. They looked at Yi Qingluo in astonishment. This is also part of your plan? Old Master Mu asked in a daze, seeing Yi Qingluo nodding. Mu family's old and young expressed that this lady was simply too terrifying. It was as if everything was under her control. Where did she get the confidence from? To think that she could incite those commoners. If the commoners were afraid of death, wouldn't that incite failure? Yi Qingluo's lips curled slightly as her long and narrow eyes were filled with craftiness. Because I believe the Mu family's position in their hearts. As long as they still have a heart, they will remember what you've done for them. She chuckles and looks at Mu Xiao with admiration. It's all thanks to Grandpa Mu for leading the Mu family to be so upright. Mu family's elder Xiao looked at Yi Qingluo's smiling face and remained silent for a long time. This girl was really amazing. Previously, he heard the two young lads mentioning about Yi Qingluo nonstop. They became interested in the girl. Now he saw it with his own eyes. Their fondness towards Yi Qingluo increased. His strength was outstanding, he was loyal, and he had a brilliant mind. He was neither servile nor overbearing, neither arrogant nor rash. Such an amazing girl would definitely become a great person in the future. The two brats and their family had never done anything meaningful in their daily lives. Now he had finally done something right, making friends with a miraculous lady like Yi Qingluo. For the Mu family, it was a great fortune. If Mu Zifan and Mu Zifei were present at this moment, they would probably have to wipe away their tears. Were they even related by blood? Below the altar, Yi Qingqian's voice became softer and softer. Yi Qingluo then slowly opened her mouth. Stop! If you continue fighting, someone will really die. Her calm and sweet voice was extremely pleasing to the ear. She was obviously using an ordinary tone and saying ordinary words, reverberating in the commoners' ears. It easily made those commoners to stop. Their irritable and furious hearts seemed to have calmed down in that clear spring-like voice. Chapter 1962. This is the beloved bed-warming maid of the leader of the dark forces. If you kill her, I'm afraid it will incur the hatred of that leader. Yi Qingluo smiled lightly as she slowly leapt down from the altar. She took leisurely steps and stopped beside Yi Qingqian. When the commoners heard that, they instantly regained their senses. A look of fear and horror appeared on his face. The bed-warming maid of the leader of the dark forces? If they really killed Yi Qingqian, would the dark forces let them off? Luckily, they still retained their rationality, and when they were beating Yi Qingqian up, they didn't hit her vital points. As for the female commoners, their gazes towards Yi Qingqian were filled with disdain. On the contrary, they regretted not kicking her a few more times earlier. A vixen who relied on her seductive looks, they thought that Yi Qingqian was some official in the dark forces. They had not expected that she was just a bed-warming maid, merely a vixen who used her power to bully others, no matter what the commoners were thinking. They had retreated out of Yi Qingqian's boundary, giving up the space to Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingqian laid on the ground on her last breath, twitching. Her clothes had long since been pulled, revealing her skin, a head of messy hair, full of dirt. There wasn't a single spot on her body which was unscathed. It could be seen how vicious those commoners were. If it was any other cultivator, they probably wouldn't be able to survive after being beaten up by hundreds, or even thousands of people. Not knowing what kind of transformation Yi Qingqian had done to her body in the dark forces through the dark arts, not only was she still alive, the injuries on her body were only superficial wounds, but it didn't harm her life. Yi Qingluo rubbed her chin as she stared at Yi Qingqian calmly. The current Yi Qingqian shouldn't be considered as a person. This kind of iron body, she probably had long become an immortal monster. You slut, I won't want to kill you. Yi Qingqian widened her eyes, which were filled with hatred, as she stared fiercely at Yi Qingluo. She opened her mouth and let out a low, intermittent roar. Yi Qingluo looked down at her. Looking at Yi Qingqian's disheveled state, but still tenacious life force, she sighed softly. Yi Qingqian, you're really a monster. Yi Qingqian's face instantly turned pale. Even though he was in a sorry state and had all sorts of scars on his face, Yi Qingluo could still see through her pale face. Ah! Yi Qingluo half squatted down. A pill, from her fingertip, flicked into Yi Qingqian's mouth. It melted in her mouth, and Yi Qingqian had no chance to spit it out. Her entire body convulsed in pain as she struggled. A pair of eyes stared venomously at Yi Qingluo, as though she was questioning Yi Qingluo on what medicine she had fed her. Yi Qingluo clapped her hands as she smiled lightly. It's just a medicinal pill to replenish your energy. Anyway, you're an immortal monster, so just stay alive and let me torture you. Nonsense. I'm not a monster. You are. Yi Qingqian's eyes were flustered, as though she had not expected that Yi Qingluo had seen through all her secrets. Her breathing was hurried, as she looked in terror at Yi Qingluo, who was slowly approaching. Suddenly, strength came from nowhere. Enduring the intense pain from being beaten up, he got up from the ground. But before she could take a step forward and run a step, suddenly a tearing pain came from the sole of her feet. It was as if something was tearing at her feet. Following that was the intense pain of her bones being smashed. Both her feet knelt heavily on the ground. Yi Qingqian raised her head in terror as she stared at Yi Qingluo. What did you do to me? My body. Asterisk. Chapter 1963. Yi Qingluo's lips curled upwards as she gave an alluring smile. Of course it's to stop you from leaving. Yi Qingqian's eyes were overwhelmed with shock as the intense pain made her body, which was sprawled on the ground, started to twist. Her 5 fingers clenched tightly onto the ground as the hard ground was scratched by her fingers, leaving streaks of marks. Yi Qingqian, do you think that you can still hope for those dark forces' remnants to save you? Yi Qingluo looked at her, trying her best to stand up as she couldn't help but laughed out softly. Yi Qingluo's slender brows rose as she pointed behind Yi Qingqian. Why don't you take a look? Yi Qingqian's beautiful eyes kept expanding as it was filled with malevolence. I'm not lying to you. That pill which I fed you earlier is to replenish your physical strength. Other than your legs, you still have the strength to turn your head. Yi Qingluo crossed her arms as she looked at her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Yi Qingqian's face sunk as she moved her body. Indeed, her body, which was weakened by the commoners, regained its strength. Other than the intense pain from her legs, there wasn't any discomfort in the other parts of her body. Yi Qingqian naturally didn't feel that this was Yi Qingluo's kindness, intentionally sparing her life. This was definitely Yi Qingluo, that slut's new way of torturing people. If Yi Qingluo knew what Yi Qingqian was thinking, she would definitely smile and nod her head as she told her, Young lady, you've guessed correctly. Yi Qingqian laid on the ground as her bent fingers clenched into a fist. After some time, she turned her head back as she looked at the place where the commoners were standing. She was filled with apprehension and uneasiness. Why, when she was being beaten up by those lowly commoners, the 200 Dark Forces men, whom she had specially selected, actually didn't save her or stop those commoners' actions. When Yi Qingqian turned her head back, she saw, round after round, guards dressed in royal family's armor surrounded the entire West Square. Those 200 Dark Forces men had long been subdued by the royal family's guards and had no way to resist. The crowd slowly opened up a path. They saw a man dressed in a dragon-embroidered robe, walking over with steady footsteps, filled with majesty. Dragon embroidered robe. That was the dragon robe that only the current monarch could wear. Yi Qingqian's eyes were filled with astonishment. You, how could you possibly? No, Lung Fengying, how could you? The person in front of her was delicate, handsome, and extremely gentle. He looked like a good young master, a very amiable young master. Wasn't that the current crown prince, Lung Fengying? Hadn't she locked Lung Fengying in the crown prince's chambers? Lung Fengying's tiger talisman, as well as the sovereign's jade seal, had already fallen into her hands. How was it possible for Lung Fengying to become a monarch? He could even lead troops to counter her? No, impossible. Yi Qingqian staggered as she stood up and pointed at Lung Fengying as she cried out sharply. Lung Fengying, are you thinking of rebelling? Without an imperial edict, how could you become the monarch of the West Continent? She pointed at the imposing royal guards. Do you all want to rebel with that traitor? Do you all want to become traitors? Yi Qingqian was hysterical. Those royal guards did not seem to have heard what she said at all. He stood there like a towering mountain. Presumptuous! How dare you be disrespectful to the new monarch? The third-generation senior statesman rebuked angrily. The new monarch is our West Continent's legitimate new monarch. How can we allow a woman like you to be so presumptuous? Asterisk. Chapter 1964. What do you mean by legitimate? You're talking rubbish. Yi Qingqian gritted her teeth. According to the West Continent's regulations, before the crown prince ascends the throne, he must obtain the Army Tiger emblem and West Continent Jade seal from the late emperor before he can hold the ascension ceremony. After a pause, Yi Qingqian raised her voice. He doesn't have the Tiger talisman or the Imperial Jade seal, nor did he report the enthronement ceremony, so he can't be considered as a civil affairs official. How can you insist that he didn't? Yi Qingluo smiled lightly as she opened her mouth, as she slowly walked towards Lung Fengying. Yi Qingqian stuttered. Of course. She couldn't say that the tiger tally was with her and the jade seal was with her. Otherwise, Yi Qingluo would definitely snatch the tiger talisman and imperial jade seal by force. She absolutely could not hand over the tiger tally and imperial jade seal. Otherwise, if Lung Fengying had a legitimate reason to cooperate with Yi Qingluo, her plan to convince the Wolf Saint Law to start with the West Continent, to rebuild the Dark Forces, and to unify the Nirvana realm once again was going to be ruined. She absolutely could not fail. He absolutely could not lose the backing of the Wolf Saint technique. Yi Qingqian clenched her teeth as she glanced at Lung Fengying. If he has it, then take it out and let all the commoners in West Continent have a look. Otherwise, who would be convinced by a new emperor? However, Yi Qingqian's words had just landed. A loud and clear voice suddenly erupted from the surroundings, resounding through the entire West Wave Square. I'm convinced. I'm convinced. Congratulations on your ascension to the throne. Congratulations on your ascension to the throne. The commoners were indeed experts at face-slapping. Within minutes, he had slapped Yi Qingqian's face. Yi Qingqian's face turned steely green as she retreated a few steps. These few steps caused the sharp pain in her legs to attack her again, as if her bones were being torn and crushed. She screamed in pain and fell heavily to the ground. She hugged her legs and screamed in pain. Her screams were instantly drowned out by the enthusiastic shouts of the people. Lung Fengying's popularity in the commoners' hearts had always been extremely high, even when Lung Fenghua was still around. Lung Fengying was the most beloved prince by the people. After that, Lung Fengying became the crown prince, the future monarch. The commoners all raised their hands in approval. Right now, the Western continent was under the control of an evil woman, and she was willfully slaughtering the innocent, dyeing the Western continent with blood. Even if Lung Fengying didn't officially become the new monarch, They would definitely use their mouths, portraying Lung Fengying as the rightful new ruler. Now that Lung Fengying had come out, he was saving the West Continent from the abyss of suffering. The commoners didn't care if he had the tiger seal or the jade seal. Those superficial things were of no use to the common people. They only knew that once Lung Fengying became the new monarch, their country would be prosperous and the people would be at peace. Yi Qingqian was convulsing in pain. He could still hear those commoners' passionate cheers for Lung Fengying. Her heart was bone-chilling. If she had known earlier, she would have killed Lung Fengying. Without the tiger talisman, without the imperial jade seal, Lung Fengying had no real power at all. What right did he have to become the monarch of the Western continent? The third-generation doyen looked at the woman lying on the ground in agony. He took out something from his bosom and held it up high. The tiger seal is here. Royal army, listen up. Those tens of thousands of valiant and high-spirited royal guards exploded into a deep roar in unison. The royal army is here. Today, this general will hand over the royal tiger seal to the new monarch. The new monarch will lead the royal army to kill this evil woman. Protect the Western continent. The tiger seal was respectfully presented to Lung Fengying. Asterisk. Chapter 1965. Kill that wicked woman. Protect the West Continent. Kill that wicked woman. Protect the West Continent. Kill that wicked woman. Protect the West Continent. Ah, the army's roars rose and fell, each one more stirring the hearts of the people. So much so that even the commoners' impassioned hearts were ignited. Following that, the royal guards raised their arms and shouted. Yi Qingqian's face turned pale. She looked at that piece of tiger talisman in disbelief, watching Lung Fengying receiving the tiger talisman and raising it up high, listening to the commoners and the royal guards' cries of wanting to get rid of her. Her heart was trembling fiercely. Uncontrollable terror rose from the bottom of her heart. No. Impossible. That tiger talisman of yours is fake. It must be fake. Yi Qingqian shook her head in panic. Her voice was extremely soft, and under the deep and resounding cries, it was hard to hear what she was saying. But Yi Qingluo heard it very clearly. She smiled till her eyes were curved as her eyes were filled with a faint smile. Yi Qingqian, based on your IQ, you still want to control an entire continent. She paused as she looked at Lung Fengying's direction. My silly elder sister, there are 2 pieces of tiger talisman. WH. What? Yi Qingqian stared at Lung Fengying in shock. No, you're lying to me. He can't become the new monarch. He doesn't have the qualifications to become the new monarch. Yi Qingluo laughed. Why doesn't he have the qualifications? Could it be that you think you have the qualifications? Yi Qingqian, although you've already been chased out of 3 Springs sect, but you're after all still a citizen of the West Continent. You're using the dark forces to attempt to control the West Continent, seeking benefits for the dark forces. Isn't this considered as treason? Saying that, she lifted a lock of hair and twined it around her fingertips as she laughed softly. Okay, Yi Qingqian, you're the real traitor. When the commoners heard that, their arrogance rose even higher. They clamored that they wanted to kill Yi Qingqian. Yi Qingluo raised her eyes as she smiled at Lung Fengying. New monarch, this is after all my elder sister, and as a younger sister I can't bear to see her die so miserably, so I'll plead on her behalf, hoping that the new monarch will hand this elder sister of mine over to me to deal with and spare her life. How about that? Lung Fengying naturally had no objections as he nodded in agreement. Yi Qingqian retreated backwards in fear. She didn't believe that Yi Qingluo would be so kind to plead for her. If it fell into Yi Qingluo's hands, she would rather die than live. You, what do you want to do? Yi Qingluo, even if I die, I will never. Pa! A loud sound pierced through the air, and a long whip fell heavily onto Yi Qingqian's body. Yi Qingqian let out a blood-curdling scream as she was whipped and rolled on the ground several times. Yi Qingqian's body was also left with a deep whip mark. Yi Qingluo, that's mine. Yi Qingqian saw the long whip in Yi Qingluo's hand and was so infuriated that a mouthful of blood spurted out. Yi Qingluo was holding the dark illusion whip in her hand. Yi Qingqian and the dark illusory whip had long signed the contract. Yi Qingluo held the dark illusory whip and actually didn't encounter any resistance from the dark illusory whip. This was impossible. Yi Qingqian tried hard to adjust the profound qi in her body, trying to summon the dark illusion whip. But no matter how she tried to summon it, the dark illusion whip just hung limply in Yi Qingluo's hand without any reaction at all. More accurately speaking, she didn't detect any presence from the dark illusion whip at all. Could it be that Yi Qingluo had destroyed her dark illusion whip and completely corroded the dark illusion whip's demonic qi? No. How could Yi Qingluo possibly have such an ability? Asterisk. Chapter 1966. Yi Qingluo seemed to have noticed Yi Qingqian's surprise. She shook the dark magic whip in her hand, like a poisonous snake, twisting and circling. She giggled. Don't be surprised. It's not the first time I destroyed your long whip. You. Yi Qingqian's face suddenly turned gloomy. Of course, she would not forget how Yi Qingluo humiliated her in the past. Yi Tianquang racked his brains, spent money and resources to find a supreme grade whip for her. In the end, Yi Qingluo handed it over to Leng Fenghua's hands, allowing Leng Fenghua to destroy her soft whip in front of her. At that time, she truly loved Leng Fenghua. The whip was destroyed. She was heartbroken. Now, Yi Qingluo had once again destroyed her second long whip. Demonic weapons should not appear in Nirvana realm. Yi Qingluo suddenly moved her wrist. The long whip in her hand turned into a poisonous snake, scuttling in the direction of Yi Qingqian. The poisonous snake was like an afterimage, winding and circling in the air, as if it had a life of its own. It heavily whipped Yi Qingqian's body. Yi Qingqian screamed miserably. There was another bloody whip mark on her body. The whip mark was scarlet, oozing blood. It was a ghastly sight. Yi Qingqian knelt on the ground from the whip. She looked at Yi Qingluo with eyes full of disbelief. Yi Qingluo's whip skills were too strange. When Yi Qingluo lashed out, she didn't even have time to see the trajectory of the long whip. One must know that this dark magic whip was already a dead object. Even she would not be able to execute such a smooth whip technique. How all was this possible? Since when did Yi Qingluo have such attainments in whip skills? Yi Qingqian, don't you like to play with the whip? Now, I will accompany you to play. Yi Qingluo's lips curled up slightly. Her sweet smile seemed to carry the brilliance of the world. But when he met her charming eyes, he could clearly see the murderous intent in Yi Qingluo's eyes. Yi Qingqian obviously saw that murderous intent. Yi Qingqian was terrified. He had clearly thought of thousands of possibilities. However, he had never thought that things would take such a turn. Leng Fengying became the new monarch and led the royal army to subdue the people from the dark forces whom she had been relying on. He had lost the help of the dark forces. In front of Yi Qingluo, she was just a dreg. Could it be? Was he really going to die in Yi Qingluo's hands today? No, she didn't want to die. Before Yi Qingluo died, how could she be willing to die? Yi Qingqian's malevolent face was howling as she suddenly pounced towards Yi Qingluo's direction. Her pounce was too sudden. Among the crowd, a few panicky and anxious cries were heard. Qingluo! A few figures walked out from the crowd, just as Yi Qingqian was about to pounce onto Yi Qingluo. Suddenly, a long edge transformed into countless black whip shadows in midair. Immediately following that, It covered the sky and covered the earth, as it tightly bound Yi Qing-qian into the long whip. "Don't worry, how could I let you die?" Yi Qing-luo sneered as her arm suddenly exerted strength and threw the bound Yi Qing-qian heavily onto the ground. "Ah!" Yi Qing-jian let out a blood-curdling scream. "Pa pa pa! Pa pa pa! Pa pa!" A series of long whip lashing sounds were heard, one after another. The long whip didn't contain any profound qi. It was just that brute force lashing, on the contrary, made one's skin split open, causing unbearable pain. One whip after another, the entire sky above the public square was filled with paw-paw sounds. Asterisk. Chapter 1967. Yi Qing-qian screamed miserably. Her body was whipped as she rolled on the ground. Her skin and flesh, which had just been healed by Yi Qing-luo's pill, was whipped once again, and it was a horrible sight to behold. Yi Qing-qian's miserable cries continued. The surroundings were in silence. No one dared to open their mouths to break the atmosphere. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock and admiration as they looked at the young lady who had whipped Yi Qing-qian till she rolled on the ground. Could it be that she had fed Yi Qing-qian the pill earlier so that she could whip to her heart's content now? Looking at Yi Qing-luo whipping one after another ruthlessly. But the expression on her face had not changed at all. A faint smile hung on her lips as her eyes squinted, looking extremely languid. This young lady was really terrifying. Yi Qing-luo whipped Yi Qing-qian, and every whip was full of strength, even though she didn't release her profound energy. These whips were enough to destroy Yi Qing-qian's internal organs and every single one of her tendons. That's right, tendons. Every whip from Yi Qing-luo was on Yi Qing-qian's tendons and bones. She wanted to shatter Yi Qing-qian's bones and break her tendons. No matter how Yi Qing-qian's body was transformed into an undying monster, under this kind of shattering whips, there was no way to reverse the situation. Yi Qing-qian had been jumping around for too long. Every time she jumped around, it would hurt her brothers. Her reverse scale was her brothers. Yi Qing-qian had challenged her bottom line time and time again. Yi Feng was almost killed by her. Devil Class's brothers almost died because of her. The brothers in the World Group suffered serious injuries time and time again because of her. All of these, if it wasn't to make Yi Qing-qian unable to live or die, how would she be able to vent the anger in her heart? Letting Yi Qing-qian die was letting her off too easily. Yi Qing-qian's life wasn't as valuable as a strand of her brother's hair. She would not let Yi Qing-qian die. She would let Yi Qing-qian live in despair, living her days in despair. Pa! A sharp glint flashed past Yi Qing-luo's eyes. The long whip in her hand had ruthlessly smashed Yi Qing-qian onto the side of the altar. Following that, another round of whip shadows fell from the sky. Time passed, second by second. After an unknown period of time, the commoners only felt their legs go numb, and their bodies almost stiffened from maintaining a posture. Yi Qing-luo then slowly retracted her long whip. When Yi Qing-luo stopped her whipping, the commoners were shocked as they looked at the place where the abuse was taking place. Blood and minced meat were splattered all over the altar. Yi Qing-qian laid on the ground. How would she have the strength to stand up? Apart from her face, there was not a single part of her body that was unscathed. His skin was lacerated and his flesh was badly mangled. Blood stained the place where she was lying. The entire scene was as terrifying as it could be. They were as shocked as they could be. It was as disgusting as it could get. Some of the more timid ones directly bent over and began to vomit. This scene was truly too shocking. He had seen beheadings and torture. He would say that he had never seen such a bloody whipping. What was even more terrifying was, under this kind of whipping situation, Yi Qing-qian remained conscious from the start till the end. Even though his body was a bloody mess, his bones were broken, and his tendons were severed. However, she still had one breath left. Furthermore, her consciousness was extremely clear. Moreover, she had sufficient energy. She could scream miserably. She could curse. She could roar. Her voice was sharp and shrill. But she just didn't have the energy to avoid Yi Qing Luo's long whip. She remained conscious, suffering the whipping to such an extent. Chapter 1968. Yi Qing Luo. Kill me if you have the ability. Just kill me. Yi Qing Qian was in so much pain that she wished she was dead as she cried out in pain. She simply couldn't stand such cruel treatment. She could clearly feel the pain of her body being whipped, the feeling of her bones being smashed, the feeling of her meridians being ripped. The pain of being whipped one after another on her body. She could also clearly feel the heart-wrenching, lung-splitting, and tearing pain of her flesh being torn apart. She wanted to die. Rather die. She didn't want to suffer such torture. Qing Luo, enough. Behind her, those few people who had just walked out from the crowd rushed up to the altar. They stood behind Yi Qing Luo, their eyes filled with worry. Earlier, Yi Qing Luo was totally not like her usual self. That kind of imposing manner, that kind of ruthlessness. Even if it was them, they were slightly flustered. Most of them were worried about Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Qian, who was lying on the ground, conscious. Her gaze swept past those few ordinary-looking people dressed in coarse linen clothes, as her eyes suddenly widened viciously. "It's you guys! It's you guys! Earlier it was you guys who incited those commoners to make a move against me. If they were ordinary commoners, how would they dare to lead the way?" This was Yi Qing Luo's scheme. It was Yi Qing Luo who had arranged people first, preparing to kill with a borrowed knife at the right time. Seeing that they were exposed, Long Yunjian and the others slowly tore off the human skin mask on their faces, revealing their original looks. These few people were indeed arranged by Yi Qing Luo to mix in among the commoners. Long Yunjian, Mo Yuing, Tong Ziqing trio. But they weren't specially arranged to incite the commoners, to intentionally lead the way. She only wanted them to investigate what kind of trap Yi Qing Qian had set, waiting for her to fall into it. But she had not expected Yi Qing Qian to be so confident in herself. She thought that with the 200 Dark Forces remnants, and using the Mu family and the commoners as a bargaining chip, she would be able to force Yi Qing Luo to give in. Hence, it gave Yi Qing Luo a chance to retaliate. In the end, it turned out to be like this. To put it bluntly, it was caused by Yi Qing Qian's overconfidence. Long Yunjian took a look at Yi Qing Qian, who had almost turned into a pile of rotten flesh as his brows creased as he asked calmly, "Qing Luo, what do you intend to do with her next?" If Yi Qing Luo still wanted to torture Yi Qing Qian, then he would be the one to do it. He simply couldn't bear to see that cold and ruthless Qing Luo again. Of course! Yi Qing Luo smiled sweetly as she looked down at Yi Qing Qian, sent her back to Wolf Saint technique. Yi Qing Qian's eyes suddenly lit up as she stared at Yi Qing Luo in astonishment and suspicion. What tricks are you trying to play again? How could Yi Qing Luo possibly send her back to Wolf Saint technique's side? If she returned to Wolf Saint Law's side, how could he let the Wolf Saint technique let Yi Qing Luo off? This was definitely one of Yi Qing Luo's tricks. Yi Qing Luo wanted to see her despairing expression and intentionally deceived her. Send them back. Tong Ziqing was also stunned. Wouldn't that be releasing a tiger back to the mountain? Yi Qing Luo chuckled, her eyes filled with ridicule. Tiger? Her? He had already turned into a pile of rotten meat, yet he still wanted to turn things around? Of course, nothing was absolute, but would she give Yi Qing Qian a chance to turn things around? No. She would only give Yi Qing Qian endless despair. Suddenly, just at this moment, the sound of horse hooves was heard from the commoner's direction. A royal guard flipped down and speedily rushed towards Lung Fengying as he knelt down. Immediately following that, Lung Fengying's steady voice rang. Miss Yi, it's bad. The dark forces have brought along a few other forces and are rushing towards West Lawn Public Square. Asterisk. Chapter 1969. Dark Forces? When the commoners heard the new emperor's words, their expressions changed drastically. They had witnessed the power of the Dark Coalition. Over the past few days, the Dark Forces had shrouded the entire Western continent at an extremely fast speed and had taken control of every major force and family. He heard that the Dark Organization had also brought a few other organizations here. The commoners were all panicking. The courage he had to beat up Yi Qingqian earlier had now vanished into thin air. Yi Qingluo's slender brows rose slightly as she raised her eyes towards Lung Fengying. Then the corners of her mouth curled up. So what? Since he's here, then he's here. The matter of the West Continent can also be settled once and for all. Lung Fengying's tightly creased brows slowly relaxed. His eyes were resolute as he solemnly gazed at Yi Qingluo. Since Yi Qingluo said so, which meant that Yi Qingluo already had a foolproof plan. As long as Yi Qingluo hadn't collapsed, the Western continent could still be saved. What he needed to do was to fully believe in Yi Qingluo, to fully assist her. By now, Lung Fengying had already bet the latter half of his life, as well as everything in the West Continent, on Yi Qingluo. He firmly believed that his foresight had never been wrong. Ha ha ha. Wolf Saint technique is here to save me. Yi Qingluo, you're dead meat. You will definitely die. When Yi Qingjian, who was lying on the ground, heard this news, her face immediately revealed an ecstatic expression. Yi Qingluo squinted her eyes slightly as she looked at the lady by her feet with a smile which didn't look like a smile, and scoffed lightly. Really? It seems that the dark forces really have a way to rebuild another body for you. She had already turned into a pile of rotten flesh, and Yi Qingqian still wanted to use the Wolf Saint art to save her. It could be seen that the Wolf Saint technique definitely had a way to solve the problem of her rotten flesh. The dark secret art was already this heaven-defying. Yi Qingqian stared at Yi Qingluo fiercely. Wolf Saint Law dotes on me so much, he will definitely cure me. As for you, you will die in the hands of the Holy Wolf technique. Moreover, the Wolf Saint Law will definitely let you die in extreme agony for me. Yi Qingqian's malevolent face radiated an intense, murderous intent. Just thinking about the Wolf Saint technique made him rush over. She could almost see the state of Yi Qingluo's death. The blood in his heart began to boil. Really? Yi Qingluo's brows rose as she gave an extremely elegant smile. Just nice. I also want to see with my own eyes how much the Wolf Saint technique pampers you. As she spoke, she smiled and narrowed her eyes. She then continued in a seemingly unintentional manner. So, I'm here to test the Wolf Saint's love for you. Yi Qingluo's words made Yi Qingjian's face turn pale. The expression on his face also froze. Recalling the miserable state of being whipped, Yi Qingqian was overwhelmed with shock. What else do you want to do? Pa! A whip flew out horizontally. That long whip landed heavily on Yi Qingqian's face. A scarlet line of blood appeared on that sinister and twisted, but still extremely bewitching face. Yi Qingqian let out a blood-curdling scream as she didn't even have the strength to cover her face. My face! My face! Pa! Another whip landed on Yi Qingqian's face. Yi Qingqian screamed miserably, Don't hit my face! Don't ruin my face! Yi Qingluo, I'm apologizing to you. It's all my fault. Don't touch my face. She wanted to struggle and avoid Yi Qingluo's whip, but she couldn't muster up any strength at all. She could only cry and beg Yi Qingluo not to touch this face which she depended on for survival, even if it was to lower her head to the Yi Qingluo whom she had always hated. She was willing. Chapter 1970. Yi Qingluo stopped. She bent down slightly and glanced at Yi Qingqian, who was begging for mercy. She smiled. Her long and narrow eyes outlined an incomparably beautiful arc. "It seems like you are quite self-aware," she whispered, and her laughter was soothing. Yi Qingqian shook her head with all her might as the wounds on her face started to drip with blood. Her eyes were filled with shock as she cried out, "I beg you, Yi Qing Luo, I beg you. Don't touch my face, even if you kill me. Don't touch my face." The commoners were all dumbstruck. Even when she was whipped into a pile of minced meat, Yi Qingqian had never given in. But now, because of her looks, she lowered her voice and begged bitterly. This was the so-called. To a lady, her face was more important than her life. For her own face, even if she had to die. But if she lost her life, what was the use of her face? Yi Qingqian begged over and over again, but it didn't move Yi Qing Luo at all. Yi Qing Luo swung her long whip, which was like a poisonous snake's whip shadow as it swayed gently. Her long and narrow eyes squinted slightly as a glint flashed past. "But Yi Qingqian, have you ever thought of letting my brothers off when you dealt with them?" Yi Qingqian's begging stopped abruptly. Yi Qing Luo laughed lightly. "You won't?" Yes. Yi Qingqian would not let Yi Qing Luo's brothers off. To Yi Qingqian, killing Yi Qing Luo's brothers was equivalent to cutting off Yi Qing Luo's left and right arms. Yi Qingqian couldn't wait to kill everyone who was related to Yi Qing Luo. How could she possibly let Yi Qing Luo's brothers off? Similarly, Yi Qing Luo would not let her off. Yi Qingqian's face was filled with dead despair. Rumble. Da-da-da. A deafening sound was heard from afar. The dark forces, and those who had already collaborated with the dark forces, rushed over with the main force. Yi Qing Luo raised her eyes and looked towards the direction of that black mass attacking from. Suddenly, her lips curled into an indistinct, cold smile. "Yi Qingqian, I really can't wait to know if you two are true love." Following Yi Qing Luo's sweet laughter, the long whip in her hand covered the sky and covered the earth as it struck towards Yi Qingqian's face, as it struck downwards. "Ah, Yi Qing Luo, you bitch! I'll kill you, I'll kill you!" Yi Qingqian's miserable cries resounded throughout the entire West Continent. Wolf Saint Technique, who had rushed over, also heard Yi Qingqian's voice. Wolf Saint Dharma leapt up and quickly walked past the commoners, landing on the altar as he frantically searched for traces of Yi Qingqian. On the altar, sand and dust billowed. He had not yet steadied himself. Suddenly, something was thrown towards him. Wolf Xingfa's eyes turned cold, and he lifted his leg to kick at the incoming object. With a muffled groan, that thing was kicked to the ground. Wolf Xingfa's face turned green as he focused his gaze. The one he had kicked off the altar just now, it was Yi Qingjian, who had been whipped till her entire body was in a terrible state. "Who are?" Wolf Saint Dharma's heart tightened as he stared at Yi Qingqian's broken body, as his body trembled slightly. He speedily rushed down the altar and knelt beside Yi Qingqian. Who? Or did you hear what I said? Respond to me, respond to me." Wolf Saint Dharma's voice was trembling, as though it was filled with boundless affection. Yi Qingqian, who was lying in a pile of minced meat on the ground, trembled slightly. Chapter 1971. Wolf Saint Magic saw Yi Qingqian's body trembling slightly. A trace of ecstasy flashed past his eyes. Alive, still alive, that's good, as long as she was still alive. Even if this body was crippled, it didn't matter. Just nice, he could also use the dark arts to fulfill his long-cherished wish. The corners of Wolf Saint Magic's mouth couldn't help but rise. Both hands covered Yi Qingqian's head. That was the only place Yi Qingqian could touch. "Wolf Saint Magic, save me, save me!" Yi Qingqian tried hard to make her voice sound aggrieved and pitiful. Her head was gently turned towards his direction by the Holy Wolf technique. Yi Qing Qian adjusted the expression on her face, a pair of beautiful eyes, sparkling with tears of grievance. Blinking his eyes, he poured out his endless suffering. But Yi Qing Qian thought that her pitiful trick would succeed. But when Wolf Saint Magic's vision touched Yi Qing Qian's face, the gentle expression on his face stiffened. His eyes suddenly filled with a violent storm. His 5 fingers suddenly tightened, grabbing Yi Qing Qian's long hair. Yi Qing Qian felt the pain, drew a cold breath, and suddenly tears overflowed. "Wolf Saint Magic, you're hurting me," she said it coquettishly pitiful. Usually, Wolf Saint Magic loved this tone of voice of hers, but this time it made Wolf Saint Magic increase the strength in his hands. He pulled her hair, lifting her up. Yi Qing Qian only felt a tingling pain on her scalp, so painful that she almost fainted. In her ears, Wolf Saint Magic's vicious and furious growl rang. "How dare you hurt your own face? How dare you ruin your own face? Wolf Saint Magic." Yi Qing Qian's eardrums seemed to be ruptured. Her face twisted in pain. This distortion caused her face, which was covered in bloody scars from being whipped by the long whip and could almost be described as a bloody mess, to appear even more terrifying. It also stimulated Wolf Saint Magic's vision. His sinister eyes stared fiercely at Yi Qing Qian's face. 5 fingers suddenly clasped her lower jaw. "Yi Qing Qian, you obviously know. This Saint Magic most values your face. How dare you hurt this face to this extent?" Yi Qing Qian's body stiffened. Her fine black hair that was being hung up and the sharp pain of her scalp being pulled could not compare to the piercing pain of the Wolf Saint technique's words. The name that the Wolf Saint art called her was no longer but Yi Qing Qian. He wanted to take back her identity as protector. Did he want to abandon her? Yes, she had always known. The holy wolf Dharma doted on her in every possible way because of her face. Her face was exactly the same as the face of the woman he loved deeply. The woman that Lang Xingfa deeply loved had always been a taboo in the dark forces. Yi Qing Qian did not know much. He only knew that the woman used to be one of the holy techniques of the dark forces, called the Fox Holy Technique. As for her, it was because her appearance was exactly the same as the Fox Saint technique. He caught the attention of the Wolf Saint technique. He enjoyed the boundless love of the Wolf Saint technique. Yi Qing Qian wasn't worried about becoming a substitute. She knew that the so-called Fox Saint technique had followed the King of Darkness to death after the King of Darkness had been sealed 10,000 years ago. How could a dead person compete with her? Yi Qing Qian had always thought that with her means, it was just a matter of time for the Wolf Saint technique to fall in love with her. But now, Yi Qing Qian knew that her cognition was wrong. She didn't have this face, so she didn't have the bargaining chip to attract the Wolf Saint technique. Without the Wolf Saint technique, she only had consciousness, but her body was completely destroyed. How could she survive? Chapter 1972. Wolf Saint technique. You can heal my face. My face can definitely be healed. Yi Qing Qian opened her mouth in trepidation as she stuttered. "I'm wrong. It's my fault. I shouldn't have relied on your adoration and acted recklessly. I shouldn't have discussed with you and found trouble with Yi Qing Luo. Wolf Saint technique. Save me. I will definitely serve you well, whatever you want." Yi Qing Qian knew, as long as Wolf Saint technique was willing. Wolf Saint technique definitely had a way to save her. Her face, her crippled body, could all receive a brand new transformation. Yi Qing Luo. Wolf Saint technique gritted his teeth as he spat out these 3 words. Suddenly, he raised his head abruptly. His scarlet red eyes were like a sharp blade, piercing fiercely towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Yi Qing Luo stood leisurely on the altar. Her long and narrow eyes squinted as her slender brows rose, apparently in a good mood. More accurately speaking, She was the one who was enjoying the show. She guessed correctly. What Wolf Saint Technique cared about was indeed Yi Qing Qian's face. That time at the Dark Forces, when she saw that Wolf Saint Technique knew that Yi Qing Qian once had two men, he didn't reveal any jealous expression. So she had her suspicions. If he really loved Yi Qing Qian, then how is it possible that when he heard about Lung Fenghua, or Lung Fengying, he wasn't moved at all? Today's test was indeed, as expected, exactly the same. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up in ridicule as she squinted at Wolf Saint Technique and laughed softly. So Wolf Saint Technique's love is so shallow. It's just a face ruined, and he abused her in this way. I really feel bitterly disappointed for my poor eldest sister. The commoners. Was this called ruining a face? This was basically ruining Yi Qing Qian's entire person. They were very curious. How on earth did Yi Qing Luo manage to pull off such nonsense in a serious manner? The veins on Wolf Saint Technique's forehead popped out as the sinister scarlet eyes glinted with an even more intense glint. Yi Qing Luo, clicked her tongue. My eldest sister's entire life had already been extremely miserable. In order to climb up the throne, she finally managed to sleep with the previous crown prince and worked hard to climb up to the current monarch. Luckily, our new monarch is an upright gentleman and was not moved. This big sister of mine can only linger around, and finally met such a good man like Wolf Saint Fa. But unfortunately, he's such a shallow person. She shook her head and said regretfully, I really feel sad for my poor sister. Poochie! The commoners couldn't help but laugh out loud. This Miss Ye's mouth was indeed a little too poisonous. Although she was speaking up for her elder sister, she still felt that it was unfair. But, apparently, it was to tell everyone about Yi Qing Qian's glorious achievements. This Yi Qing Qian was once the #1 beauty in Three Spring City. As it turned out, she was just a high-class lady with the title of a daughter of a rich family. No, that's not right. Three Springs sect had long severed all relations with Yi Qing Qian. Yi Qing Qian couldn't even be considered as a high-ranking lady. Wolf Saint Technique's eyes were filled with anger as he clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth as he stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo and shouted sternly, Yi Qing Luo! If you dare to hurt her face, I want your life. Wolf Saint Technique only cared about Yi Qing Qian's face. As for that body, how many men had been there before, he didn't care. What he wanted was that face. But Yi Qing Luo actually destroyed that face. He had completely destroyed the only obsession he had for thousands of years. He must make Yi Qing Luo pay a painful price. Bam! He flipped his palm and slapped Yi Qing Qian's body towards He Ji, who was curled up in the corner of the altar. He Ji hurriedly caught Yi Qing Qian, who was like mud. Stay here for this Saint Technique. If you let this face get hurt to such a state, this Saint Technique will settle the score with you later. Wolf Saint Technique threw out a sentence. His figure suddenly flashed as he flew towards the altar. Chapter 1973. Wolf Saint Technique landed on the altar, standing face to face with Yi Qing Luo. His sinister eyes shot out an intense, ruthless light. He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles were protruding. Yi Qing Luo gave a light smile. Oh, is Wolf Saint Technique fighting with me for the Dark Forces, or for Yi Qing Qian's face? Wolf Saint Technique sneered. I'm not going to argue with you. Today, I'm going to avenge the King of Darkness, to avenge the Dark Forces. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo, the Dark Forces would have controlled half of Nirvana realm by now. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo, the King of Darkness's plan would have succeeded. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo, there would still be the high and mighty Dark Saint Technique. But now, everything was ruined because of Yi Qing Luo. The Dark Forces were completely exposed in Nirvana realm. Absorbing the young cultivator's soul had also infuriated Nirvana realm. There was no place for them in Nirvana realm. Moreover, Yi Qing Luo joined forces with the Imperial Palace to exterminate the Dark Forces. almost losing 2/3 of the dark forces. Now, the dark forces who escaped with the few pharaohs and saint techniques were not more than 1,000 people. All these were thanks to Yi Qing Luo. Now, the dark forces' revival could only depend on the West continent to make a comeback. They could only succeed and not fail. Yi Qing Luo must die. Wolf Saint Technique's face sunk as he raised his hand high. Everyone, when the dark forces take over the West continent, the conditions that I promised you will be fulfilled. Behind him, a deafening roar was heard, echoing Wolf Saint Technique's words. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows as she looked past Wolf Saint Technique towards the crowd. She was very interested in the forces that chose to cooperate with the dark forces at this time. Did those people really believe that the dark forces had the ability to destroy the West continent, or were they stupid? This look was within Yi Qing Luo's expectations, but at the same time it was unexpected. Yi Fengru represented Three Springs sect and brought Three Springs sect's power to stand with the dark forces, which was expected. After all, when Three Springs sect restored Yi Qing Qian's identity, it indicated that Three Springs sect would cooperate with the dark forces. And the reason why Yi Qing Qian was able to control the entire West continent so quickly, even the four great families were unable to resist. It was because of the Three Springs sect's help. The Three Springs sect had to stand on the side of the dark forces, no matter what. As for the one standing beside Yi Fengru, it made Yi Qing Luo a little surprised. Because wasn't that person the patriarch of one of the four great profounder clans, the Shangguan clan? Ever since the Shangguan clan was expelled from the four great profounder clans, then he vanished without a trace. He never heard any news about the Shangguan clan again. He never expected to see the Shangguan clan on the side of the dark forces. It could be seen that after the Shangguan clan was removed from the list, they had no choice but to follow the dark forces. What Yi Qing Luo was most concerned about was the person standing behind Yi Fengru and the Shangguan family. Yi Qing Luo's intuition told her that that person was the most dangerous. It was a woman of about 40 years of age. He was dressed in a coarse green robe, and his hair was tied neatly behind his head like a man's. She looked like a Taoist nun. There was a long sword on her back, and the sword hilt was emitting a black aura, which was extremely terrifying. This person looked extremely unfamiliar. In Yi Qing Luo's memory, she had never seen her before. Asterisk. Chapter 1974. 10 Views. Sect leader of 10 Views? Suddenly, someone in the crowd exclaimed. After the exclamations were heard, the crowd all turned their gazes to the heroic woman who looked like a Taoist nun. 10 Views? That was the biggest sect in Nirvana Realm. The sect leader of 10 Views was in cahoots with the dark forces? The people couldn't help but feel a piercing chill in their hearts. If the biggest sect in Nirvana Realm intervened in this matter, even Yi Qing Luo might not be able to get away with it. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her brows. When she heard that the person who made her feel a sense of danger was the sect leader of 10 Views, she finally understood where that sense of danger came from. She had heard rumors about the 10 sceneries. About 10 Views, she had some understanding. 10 Views, the biggest sect in Nirvana Realm. It was located in the most prosperous area of Jade Dome City in East Continent. It could be said that 10 Views' status in East Continent had surpassed the royal family. It could almost be said that they were on equal footing with one of the four major sects, Jade Dome sect. One must know that the sect leaders of the other three sects were all extremely bold people, completely different from Yi Tianquang, who desperately tried to lower the status of Three Springs sect to please other forces. In the other 3 continents, when the royal family saw the sect leader, they had to bow respectfully. In this case, 10 Views could still be on equal footing with Jade Dome sect. It could be seen the strength of 10 Views. The sect leader of 10 Views, Jing Yanyan, stood under the altar, and Yi Qing Luo stood on the altar. For eyes met, as if Yi Qing Luo was at a high place, overlooking the sect leader of 10 views. Jing Yanyan's expression sank slightly, suddenly leaped up and flew up from behind Shangguan family patriarch and Yi Fengru towards the altar. The commoners sucked in a breath of cold air. This sect leader of 10 views was indeed the sect leader of the biggest sect. This boldness, even the dark forces wolf Saint technique, couldn't be compared. Jing Yanyan held her head high, with the arrogant posture of a sect leader, coldly glanced at Yi Qing Luo. "Is it you who bullied my disciple and disgraced the reputation of 10 views?" The people gasped again. Right. They had forgotten. Yi Qingqian was the only direct disciple that the head of Shijing sect had personally chosen. Yi Qingqian was once the #1 beauty in Three Spring City. When she was 10 years old, she was brought back to 10 Scenery by Jing Yanyan and cultivated there for 3 years. The only direct disciple. No wonder Jing Yanyan would join the Dark Forces camp for Yi Qingqian. Looking at this stance, Jing Yanyan wanted to take revenge for her direct disciple, right? Poochie! A chuckle interrupted the thoughts of the people, only to see Qing Luo covering her mouth as she laughed incomparably delightfully. What sect leader Shijing said is rather laughable. When did I bully your disciple and disgrace your Shijing sect's reputation? Without waiting for Jing Yanyan to speak, Yi Qing Luo continued, bully your disciple? If your disciple hadn't tried to kill me time and time again, causing my brothers to almost lose their lives, wouldn't I have been able to retaliate? Or does the sect leader of the 10 Scenery sect think that the 10 Scenery sect is the #1 sect in the Nirvana realm, so you can act as you please outside, harming other people's lives? Pausing for a moment, she continued, and when others retaliate, is it a humiliation to 10 Scenery? Sect leader Shijing's sect rules have really broadened my horizons. When Jing Yanyan heard that, she sneered and said with a proud look, "That's right, my Shijing disciples can be like this. My Shijing disciples can do whatever they want outside. If anything happens, this sect leader will bear the responsibility. But if outsiders hurt my Shijing disciples, this sect leader will absolutely not let them off." Asterisk. Chapter 1975. His words were extremely domineering and overbearing. If the disciples of the 10 sites were present, they would probably be so touched that they would sacrifice their lives for her. However, these words, in the ears of the common people, were a declaration of war. So her disciple was a human. Others were not human. This view was also slightly intoxicated. In that case, sect head Shijing is determined to stand up for Yi Qingqian today. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows curved into a smile as she asked with a light smile, "Not only for my disciple, but also for the reputation of the 10 sites." Jing Yanyan's eyes were flowing with a sharp light. She finally understood why Yi Qingqian insisted on going against Yi Qing Luo. Because this seemingly sweet and harmless girl, in fact, it was too dangerous. If she couldn't be used for herself, then it must be done quickly. Otherwise, the one who would die in the future would be herself. Uffed! Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but laugh out loud. She laughed so hard that her stomach felt pain. She covered her abdomen and giggled nonstop. Jing Yanyan's face was like a dying workshop, green and red, until Jing Yanyan's eyebrows twitched, obviously unable to hold back, and was about to explode. Yi Qing Luo stopped laughing. Her slender fingers stroked her eyelashes and wiped away the tears of laughter. She giggled and said, "The one who tarnished the reputation of the 10 visions, wasn't it the direct disciple who was personally taught by the 10 visions sect master, the one whose skills were inferior to others?" The expression on Jing Yanyan's face was completely stiff and livid, not waiting for Jing Yanyan to explode. In front of her, suddenly, an afterimage like a ray of sunlight flashed past. Jing Yanyan hadn't reacted yet, only heard a crisp "pa" sound of slap in her ear. At the same time, he felt a burning pain on his cheek. Jing Yanyan's eardrum buzzed sound. The sound made her brain hurt like it was being torn apart. The wind blew, and the smoke dispersed. Everyone clearly saw Jing Yanyan on the altar, the obvious red and swollen handprint on her face. The audience was silent. The 10 Sights sect master was slapped in the face, and the person who slapped her. She stood there leisurely as if nothing had happened, as if everything had nothing to do with her. Jing Yanyan only came back to her senses after a long while. The stinging pain on her cheeks caused her expression to gradually turn ferocious. The arrogance and dignity of the sect leader suddenly collapsed. Her gaze seemed to be burning with raging fury as she stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo. "You! How dare you!" "Yi Qing Luo, this sect master is absolutely irreconcilable with you." Yi Qing Luo smilingly pulled out a handkerchief and slowly wiped her hands. "Patriarch Shijing, I'm just using my actions to show that I'm actually quite similar to Shijing's sect." Her hand that was wiping her hands suddenly paused. She raised her eyes with a smile and gazed at Jing Yanyan with a light smile. In her charming eyes, a cold light flowed wantonly, like an ice-cold, poisonous snake, locking onto Jing Yanyan. Jing Yanyan's heart skipped a beat. She anxiously retreated a few steps and suddenly creased her brows, staring fiercely at Yi Qing Luo. But the current Yi Qing Luo had already changed her expression. "Speaking of which, I'm also very overbearing. It's always me who bullies others. If others retaliate, I absolutely won't be polite." Yi Qing Luo smiled, incomparably enchanting. Her charming eyes curved. The arc was narrow and charming.